3 months before Evelyn Mercer left her a cabin nobody wanted, Nora Bennett's father disowned her over a cup of decaf and a stack of assisted living brochures. Richard arranged the brochures on Evelyn's kitchen table as if he were presenting bids to a client. The glossy covers showed silver-haired couples laughing beside a swimming pool. No walkers, no oxygen tubes, no adult daughters checking whether anyone had swallowed a pill or tucked it under a tongue. "This one has a salon," he said. From the hospital bed in the living room, Evelyn called, "Good. I've been worried sick about my highlights." Caleb lowered his face, but Nora saw the smile he was trying to hide. Richard did not smile. He had driven nearly an hour in a pressed blue shirt, and he expected the room to respect the effort. "Nora," he said, tapping the least expensive brochure, "tell her." Nora stood at the sink rinsing oatmeal from a saucepan. Her grandmother had eaten 4 spoonfuls, declared the 5th an act of aggression, and hidden half a blood pressure tablet beneath her napkin. "Tell her what? That this can't continue." The saucepan slipped in Nora's wet hands and struck the sink with a sharp metal clang. Evelyn startled in the other room. Nora hated all 3 of them for that. The pan, Richard, herself. "It's okay, Grandma," she called. "Just me losing a fight with cookware. The cookware always wins," Evelyn said. Richard leaned back in his chair. "You see, she's confused. She's making a joke. She's lying in a medical bed in her living room. She likes the view." The view was a bird feeder hanging from a crooked shepherd's hook and a privacy fence that needed staining. Evelyn had spent 22 years complaining about that fence and knew every squirrel that traveled along it. The fat one was Franklin. The one with half a tail was Mrs. Franklin, despite Nora's repeated explanations that they might not be married. Richard turned to Caleb. "Help me out here." Caleb rubbed his thumb over a scratch in the table. He was 34, broad-shouldered like their father, and wore a gray polo embroidered with Bennett Residential. He had come straight from a job site, judging by the white dust on his work boots. "It's not a prison, Nor," he said. "People act like these places are prisons, but this one's nice. Dad and I looked at it. For how long?" "What? How long did you look at it?" Caleb glanced at Richard. "We toured it. Did you ask how many aides work nights?" Richard sighed. "Here we go. Did you ask how often they answer call buttons? Whether they have a nurse on every shift? Whether they'll let her keep Dr. Patel?" "She can't keep everybody forever," Richard said. Nora dried her hands on a dish towel printed with faded lemons. On the refrigerator behind Richard, her medication chart was held up by magnets from 3 different plumbers. Evelyn's morning pills were checked off. Her noon antibiotic was waiting beside a glass of water. A yellow legal pad listed every phone call Nora needed to make before her 4 o'clock shift at Marcy's Diner. Richard hadn't looked at any of it. Evelyn's voice floated in again. "If you're selling me, see if they'll throw in a toaster." Nora went to the living room. The air smelled faintly of menthol rub and the lavender powder Evelyn used too generously. Late afternoon light lay across the rug in pale rectangles. Evelyn looked smaller than she had that morning, her thin white hair flattened on one side and her purple cardigan buttoned wrong. Nora straightened the cardigan without mentioning it. "You want some water? I want everybody out of my house except you." Caleb brought donuts. "He can leave the donuts." Richard followed them in, carrying a brochure. "Evelyn, nobody is trying to force you. Then you've chosen an odd way to spend a Friday." He crouched beside the bed. Richard could be gentle when gentleness allowed him to remain in charge. He tucked the blanket around Evelyn's feet and lowered his voice. "You fell twice last month. Once. Twice. The second time I was already on the floor. That's 1 fall with a layover." Caleb laughed before covering it with a cough. Even Richard's mouth twitched. For a moment they looked almost like a family visiting a stubborn old woman, not 3 adults waiting to see which version of love would win. Then Richard said, "Nora can't keep throwing her life away." There it was, not Evelyn's safety, Nora's failure, dressed in concern. "I'm right here," Nora said. "I know." "She can answer for herself," Evelyn said. Richard stood. "That is exactly the problem. You've got her believing this is some noble mission. She's 27 years old, working part-time in a diner, sleeping in a chair, and burning through what little money she has." Nora felt Caleb look at her shoes. One sole had begun separating near the toe. She had glued it twice. "I had savings. You had $4,000. It was mine. And now it's almost gone." Nora stared at him. She hadn't told Richard that. Caleb's eyes returned to the scratch in the table. "You asked him?" she said. Caleb's expression tightened. "I was worried." "So, you went through my bank mail?" "I picked it up from Dad's house." "You still had statements going there." "I had one statement going there." "Could we not get sidetracked?" Richard said. Nora folded her arms to keep from taking the brochure and tearing it in half. "Grandma has home health visits 3 times a week. Dr. Patel says she can stay here if someone is with her. She wants to stay. And when you collapse?" "I'm tired." "I'm not collapsing. You missed your manager interview? Because she had pneumonia. You keep having reasons." Evelyn's fingers moved against the blanket, searching. Nora gave her the edge to hold. Richard paced to the mantel, where framed photographs leaned shoulder to shoulder. Ruth appeared in 4 of them. Ruth at a restaurant table with her head tipped back. Ruth in gardening gloves. Ruth standing between Nora and Caleb at a county fair, when all 3 of them were adults and pretending not to hate the heat. Richard picked up none of those pictures, but his gaze snagged there. "Your mother did this too," he said. She let Evelyn make every decision sound like a test of loyalty. The room changed. Even the oxygen concentrator seemed to quiet between breaths. "Don't," Evelyn said. Richard turned. "You don't get to tell me not to talk about my wife, my daughter, my wife." Nora had spent 6 years navigating that argument without speaking. Ruth had belonged to each of them in a different way, and her death had made every claim permanent. Richard said Evelyn had filled Ruth's final years with suspicion. Evelyn said almost nothing about the marriage at all. Caleb treated the subject like a faulty wire in a wall, something best left untouched if the lights still came on. Nora had once found silence respectful. Lately it felt more like cowardice. "What did Mom do?" she asked. Richard looked at her. "She turned every disagreement into proof that she wasn't loved enough. Evelyn encouraged it. When your mother was sick, instead of helping us keep things calm, she kept pulling her backward." "Backward where?" "Into old grievances, old fantasies. Every time Ruth spent time with her, she came home angry." Evelyn's chin lifted from the pillow. "Ruth came home angry because she was angry." "And there it is," Richard said. "You're still doing it." Nora could feel Evelyn's pulse through the thin skin of her wrist. Fast, then faster. "That's enough," Nora said. Richard blinked. "Excuse me? She needs to rest. We haven't settled anything. There's nothing to settle today. I arranged a room assessment for Monday." Nora thought she had misunderstood him. "You what?" "They'll evaluate her needs. If she qualifies, there's an opening." Evelyn's hand closed around Nora's. "No," Nora said. "It's an assessment. No, you don't have authority to stop her from hearing her options. And you don't have authority to schedule strangers to come inspect her like a damaged roof." Caleb rose from the couch. "Okay, everybody needs to dial it down." Richard ignored him. "You think because you hand out pills and heat soup, you understand everything. No. I think because she said no, the answer is no. She is frightened, yes. And you are feeding that fear. I'm listening to her. You're hiding here." That landed because it was partly true. Before Evelyn got sick, Nora had been up for an assistant kitchen manager job at a hotel downtown. Better pay, benefits, clean white jackets with names stitched over the heart. She had wanted it badly enough to practice interview answers while driving. Then Evelyn's infection had spread. The hospital had called, and nobody else had been available. After a while, being needed had become easier than wondering what she might have been chosen for. Richard stepped closer. "You have always done this. The moment life asks you to compete, you find somebody else's emergency." Nora's face went hot. Evelyn tried to sit up. "Richard." "No," Nora said softly. "Let him finish." Richard's jaw shifted. She knew that look. He was deciding whether to pull back or make the wound clean. "If you choose this," he said, "you don't get to blame me for what it costs. I haven't blamed you for anything. You will." "Dad," Caleb warned. Richard glanced at him, then back at Nora. "Your grandmother has spent years making me the villain. Your mother let her. I won't watch you do the same. This isn't about you. That's what people say right before they make everything about me." Evelyn let out one breath that might have been a laugh if it hadn't sounded so tired. Richard's eyes hardened. "Fine. Stay. Lose the job. Lose your money. Build your whole identity around being the only person who cares. But if you choose her over your own family, then stop calling yourself my daughter." Caleb went still. Nora waited for the sentence to soften after it entered the room. Some words did. They arrived sharp, then embarrassment rounded off their edges. Richard only picked up his keys. "Dad," Caleb said again. "You coming?" Caleb looked at Nora. His lips parted. She saw apology there, or fear, or perhaps only the wish to escape before anybody required him to become definite. He picked up the box of donuts. Evelyn pointed a trembling finger at him. "Those stay." Caleb set them down. It was such a ridiculous surrender that Nora almost laughed. Caleb gave her a helpless little shrug, the same one he had used all his life when Richard made a decision for both of them. Then he followed their father out. The front door closed. Richard's truck started in the driveway. Gravel snapped beneath the tires. Nora stood beside the bed, listening until the sound disappeared. "Well," Evelyn said, "I believe we won the donuts." Nora pressed her lips together. Her grandmother looked pleased for exactly 2 seconds. Then her face crumpled. "Oh, honey," Evelyn whispered. Nora turned away under the pretense of adjusting the oxygen tubing. She could survive cruelty better if nobody was kind immediately afterward. "We need to get your antibiotic in you," she said. "Nora, and you only ate 4 bites. I had 6. You hid 2 in the napkin. Those still count as bites." Nora carried the water glass to the kitchen. Her hands shook badly enough that some spilled onto the floor. She wiped it with her sock because the paper towels were 3 feet away and dignity had already left the house. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A message from Richard appeared in the family group. "Since Nora has made her decision, please direct all questions about Evelyn's care to her." A second later, the group vanished from Nora's screen. She stared at the empty space where her family had been. Then Evelyn called from the living room, asking whether Franklin the squirrel was allowed donuts, and Nora carried the antibiotic back with a smile she did not feel. Franklin was not allowed donuts. Evelyn considered this discrimination and refused her antibiotic in protest until Nora ate half a glazed one herself. "You're negotiating with the wrong person," Nora said around a mouthful. "I negotiated with union plumbers for 37 years. You answered phones at a plumbing supply company. I knew where they lived. That got the pill down." Nora checked Evelyn's pulse again, lowered the head of the bed, and waited until the lines around her grandmother's mouth eased. At 3:30, the home health aide arrived 14 minutes late, apologizing before she had both feet inside the door. Denise was 61, wore bright purple glasses, and had the useful habit of speaking to Evelyn as if illness had not made her stupid. "You behaving?" she asked. "Never cared for it." "Good. Behavior is usually just what inconvenient people demand." Nora liked her more every week. She gave Denise the medication notes, changed into black work pants, and went outside carrying her shoes so Evelyn wouldn't hear the loose sole flap. Richard's tire marks were still dark in the gravel. Nora stepped over them on her way to the car. Her Honda started on the 3rd try, shuddering so hard the rearview mirror trembled. She laid a palm on the dashboard. "Not today." The engine gave a resentful squeal. I mean it. It settled into a rough idle. Nora slipped on her shoes, tightened the laces, and drove to Marcy's with the radio off because the car made enough sounds without competition. The diner sat between a laundromat and an insurance office in a strip mall that had been beige since the invention of beige. Inside, the dinner rush smelled of onions, fryer oil, coffee, and the lemon disinfectant Marcy bought in industrial quantities. Nora tied on an apron and found 6 tickets already clipped above the grill. Marcy pointed a spatula at her. "You're late. 2 minutes. 2 minutes becomes 4. 4 becomes anarchy, and then people start asking for brunch." Marcy was 58 and had been threatening to ban brunch for as long as Nora had worked there. "I'll stay 2 minutes late." "You always stay late. That's not punishment." Della, the evening server, pushed through the swinging door and called, "Table 9 wants to know if the meatloaf is gluten-free." "The meatloaf is barely meatloaf," Marcy said. Nora took over the grill. She pressed burger patties, dropped baskets of fries, and moved with the calm that came when every problem could be solved in under 12 minutes. A steak was overcooked, or it wasn't. An egg broke, or it didn't. Nobody asked whether a person could love her father and still wish he would choke on his own certainty. At 6:15, Nora checked her phone near the walk-in refrigerator. No service. She turned airplane mode on and off. Nothing. The diner's wireless connection reached the kitchen only if she stood beside the shelf of canned tomatoes and held the phone shoulder high. 3 messages arrived at once. One was from the pharmacy, saying Evelyn's refill had been delayed. One was from Denise, telling her Evelyn had eaten soup and was resting. The third was an automated notice from the phone carrier. Her line had been removed from the family account at the request of the account holder. Nora read it twice. Richard had not waited until morning. "You planning to marry those tomatoes?" Marcy asked. Nora lowered the phone. "My service got shut off. Did you pay the bill?" "I paid Dad every month. He owned the plan." Marcy's eyebrows rose. "Your father canceled your phone while you're caring for a sick woman?" "Apparently. Is he 12? "Older, but only chronologically." Marcy dug beneath the register and handed Nora a slip of paper with the diner's wireless password written in block letters. "Eat your vegetables" had been crossed out. Beneath it was, "Now without cheese. You need calls? Give people the diner number tonight. Thank you. I'm not being kind. I don't want you holding canned goods in the air during dinner." At closing, Marcy sat across from Nora in a booth while Nora searched prepaid phone plans. The cheapest one still required money she had already mentally assigned to Evelyn's prescription. "I can add Friday lunches," Marcy said. Nora shook her head. "Denise comes afternoons, but the agency keeps changing the times." "What about nights? I'm already doing 4. You're doing 3.5. Last Tuesday you left before the pie guy arrived. Grandma had a fever." "I know. I'm not scolding you." Marcy's voice softened, which made Nora wary. "The hotel called me," Marcy said. Nora looked up. They were checking references. "When?" "Couple weeks ago. The assistant kitchen manager position." Nora had stopped thinking about it in complete sentences. "What did you tell them?" "That you're annoyingly competent and you judge people who put ketchup on eggs." "I don't judge them." "You absolutely judge them." "Did they say anything?" Marcy rubbed a coffee ring with one finger. "Just that they were finishing interviews." Nora nodded as if the information had no weight. "You could call," Marcy said. "I missed the second interview. You had a reason. Employers love reasons. Some do. We call those employers human beings." Nora packed leftover soup into a container for Evelyn. She knew Marcy meant well, but hope felt expensive. It demanded clean clothes, gasoline, preparation, a block of hours nobody else needed from her. At least disappointment let her wear old shoes. She drove home in darkness with the soup buckled into the passenger seat. Her headlights caught Caleb's truck parked along the curb. He was on Evelyn's porch beside 3 cardboard boxes and a black trash bag. Nora stopped halfway up the walk. "What is this?" Caleb shoved his hands into his pockets. "Your stuff." "My stuff was fine where it was." "Dad wants the garage cleared." "All of it? This is what was there." She recognized a box from the blender Richard had given Ruth one Christmas. Caleb was written across the side and crossed out. Nora had been added below it in Ruth's handwriting. Caleb nodded toward the door. "How's Grandma?" "Asleep." "Can I see her?" "You can be quiet." He carried 2 boxes inside while Nora took the trash bag and soup. In the living room, Evelyn slept with her mouth slightly open, the television showing a home renovation program without sound. Caleb stood at the foot of the bed. His face changed when he saw her. Nora wondered what version of Evelyn he carried when he was away. Probably the woman who wore red lipstick to hardware stores and kept peppermints loose in her purse, covered in lint. Not this woman, with bruises along her wrists and a clear tube beneath her nose. He reached down and pulled the blanket over her left foot. "Her feet get cold," Nora whispered. "I remember." Nora set the soup in the refrigerator. When she came back, Caleb was looking at the medication chart. "I could come Sunday," he said. "Sit with her a few hours." "You've said that the last 2 Sundays." "We had a commercial job run over. You own a watch. Dad schedules the cruise. You're a grown man. You think I don't know that?" His reply came out sharper than either of them expected. Evelyn stirred. They waited until her breathing steadied. Caleb lowered his voice. "I didn't know he was going to cut your phone tonight." "But you knew he would." "He was mad." "That makes it normal?" "No. Did you tell him Evelyn needs to be able to reach me?" "I told him he was overreacting." Nora gave a short laugh. "How brave." He flinched. She wished he would get angry. Caleb's shame had always made other people comfort him for what he failed to do. "I brought your things," he said. "You carried boxes from one building to another. What do you want from me, Nora?" "Nothing. You've been very clear about what's available." Caleb looked toward Evelyn. "Dad isn't wrong about everything." "Then he should try saying the things he's right about without attaching a threat. He thinks you're ruining your life." "And you?" His silence lasted half a second too long. Nora nodded. Good night, Caleb. He picked up his keys from the coffee table, then stopped beside the door. The assessment people might still come Monday. They're not coming in. Dad put down a deposit to hold the room. Then Dad made an expensive decision without asking the person who would live there. It's refundable. That must be comforting. Caleb left without promising Sunday again. Nora locked the door and leaned against it. Evelyn opened one eye. He always did have terrible timing, she said. How long have you been awake? Long enough to know he didn't bring the coconut donuts. You were supposed to be sleeping. You were supposed to be building a life. And yet, here we both are disappointing people. Nora carried the boxes into the kitchen. The first contained cookbooks, 2 winter coats, a ceramic lamp without a shade, and the white chef's jacket she had bought for the hotel interview. Her name was embroidered over the heart in blue thread because she had paid extra for it. Nora Bennett. She folded the jacket before Evelyn could see it. The second box held college notebooks, cheap earrings, old tax returns, and framed photographs Ruth had once kept on a bookshelf. Richard had packed them face down. Nora lifted out a picture of herself and Caleb at Ruth's 50th birthday, both leaning toward their mother as she blew out candles. Behind it was a photograph Nora had never noticed before. Ruth and Evelyn sat on the steps of a rough wooden porch. They were younger than Nora remembered them, but unmistakably adults. Ruth wore paint-spattered overalls and held a brush in one hand. Evelyn had yellow paint across one cheek. Behind them, a screen door stood open onto a kitchen the color of summer squash. They were laughing at someone beyond the camera. Nora took the photograph into the living room. Where was this? Evelyn looked at it, and the humor left her face. An old place. That narrows it down. Up near Cedar Hollow. Did you live there? For a while. With Mom? Evelyn traced Ruth's outline with one finger, but did not answer. Nora sat carefully on the edge of the couch. Dad said you pulled her backward. Your father likes time to move in one direction. His? What happened between you and Mom? Evelyn handed the picture back. Many things. That's not an answer. No, it's what I have tonight. Nora wanted to press. Instead, she noticed the bluish cast beneath Evelyn's fingernails and reached for the pulse oximeter. 91, she said. Take a deep breath for me. I'm tired of breathing on command. Humor me. Evelyn inhaled. The number climbed to 93, then slipped back. Nora checked the oxygen line for kinks and raised the bed. I'm calling Denise. With what phone? The question was practical. It still cut. Nora connected to the wireless and called through an app. Denise listened, asked questions, and told her what to watch. When the call ended, Nora sat beside the bed with the pulse oximeter glowing red between them. Evelyn looked at the boxes. He sent your life over in cardboard. It wasn't my life. No, my life is bigger than 3 boxes. Good answer. It's also partly in a trash bag. Less good. Nora smiled despite herself. Evelyn reached for her hand. Her grip was weak but deliberate. I was not always fair to your mother, she said, and she was not always fair to me. Don't let anyone turn that into proof we didn't love each other. Did Dad? Richard prefers a clean story. 1 injured person, 1 guilty person, no mess left on the table. Nora looked at Ruth laughing on the painted porch. Which one was he? Evelyn closed her eyes. Ask me when I'm braver. The pulse oximeter rose to 94. Nora kept holding her hand long after the number steadied, while the unopened boxes waited in the kitchen, and the photograph of a place she did not recognize rested face up on her lap. Evelyn pulled her hand away first. You should go to bed, she said. My bed is a chair with opinions. The chair is right about your posture. Nora set the photograph on the end table, propped against the lamp. She checked Evelyn's temperature, wrote down the oxygen reading, and stretched out in the green recliner that opened only if she kicked the footrest twice. Sometime before dawn, she woke to the soft rasp of Evelyn trying to reach the commode alone. What are you doing? Hosting a parade! Nora sprang up, tangling her foot in the blanket. You're supposed to wake me. You were asleep. That's why people wake people. Evelyn had already swung her legs over the side of the bed. Her cardigan hung loose around her shoulders. Nora slid an arm behind her back. On 3. I hate 3. We can go on 2. Then why count? Because I enjoy conflict before sunrise. They made it 6 steps. Evelyn's knees began to fold on the 7th. Nora caught her under the arms and lowered her onto the commode with more speed than grace. The oxygen line stretched across the rug. Evelyn's breath came in shallow pulls. "I'm all right," she said. "You're not. I'm vertical. You're sitting on a toilet in the middle of your living room. People pay extra for open floor plans." Nora crouched in front of her, one hand around Evelyn's wrist. The pulse fluttered too fast. "Look at me. I see you. What's my name?" "Oh, don't be insulting. Say it. Nora Louise Bennett, and if you tell anybody your middle name, I'll deny it." "What day is it?" "Night." "Grandma, Saturday, nearly morning. The assessment vultures come Monday." Her mind was clear. Her body was failing her in small, accumulating ways, which somehow frightened Nora more. Confusion could be blamed. Weakness had no one to argue with. Nora helped her back to bed, turned the oxygen up according to Denise's instructions, and stayed kneeling until Evelyn's breathing eased. "You can't do that again. I needed the toilet. You needed me." Evelyn looked toward the dark window. "That's becoming an expensive need." Nora pretended to adjust the blanket. "Go to sleep." At 7, she called the home health agency from the kitchen while holding the phone close to the wireless router. The coordinator offered an additional morning visit at a rate that made Nora check whether she had heard correctly. "For 1 hour?" she asked. "That includes the weekend surcharge. Does the aide arrive on a white horse?" The coordinator did not laugh. Nora opened her banking app. Richard had been right about one thing. $4,000 had never been real savings for a situation like this. It had been a polite delay between stable and broke. She scheduled the visit anyway. Caleb arrived at 11, carrying coconut donuts and a prepaid phone in a plastic bag. Nora stared at both. "What? You remembered? Grandma has asked for coconut donuts every birthday since 2009. I meant that you said you'd come Sunday. It's Saturday." "I know." He looked embarrassed. "Tomorrow got busy." "Of course it did. I came early, Nor. You can still be mad, but at least be accurate." Evelyn called from the living room. "Is that my favorite grandson? I'm your only grandson. Don't get comfortable." Caleb brought her coffee in the rooster mug, mostly milk, and sat beside the bed while she interrogated him about his work. Nora watched from the kitchen doorway. He answered patiently. When Evelyn lost the thread and asked twice whether he was still doing the pharmacy renovation, he answered twice without looking at Nora. Richard had taught Caleb to retreat from emotional conflict, but Ruth had taught him how to sit beside someone without filling silence. Nora had forgotten that. She examined the phone. "I can't take this. It's 30 days. After that, there's a card inside. Did Dad buy it?" "No." "Did he pay you to buy it?" Caleb's shoulders fell. "I bought the phone. I'll pay you back. I'm not asking you to." "I know. I'm still paying you back." He followed her into the kitchen. "Can you let one thing not become a trial? Can one thing not arrive with strings tied around it?" "There aren't strings. You work for the man who shut my phone off. I also changed your oil last winter. Was that part of a conspiracy? You charged me for the filter. You bought the expensive filter. There shouldn't be an expensive filter. Finally, something we agree on." Nora looked at him. His mouth twitched, and hers almost did too. Caleb took a paper from his pocket. "Dad paid the agency for 2 extra visits a week." "He what?" "He called them yesterday. He doesn't get to arrange her care behind my back. It's care, Nora. The thing you said nobody helps with. He'll use it." "For what? To say he's paying, so he decides." "Then don't let him decide. Keep the visits." She hated that this made sense. Caleb lowered his voice. "He's not sitting at home twirling a mustache. He was up half the night calling places. He could have called Grandma. She doesn't want to talk to him. He hasn't tried." Caleb glanced toward the living room. He doesn't know how to be in a room where nobody thinks he's right. That sounds difficult for him. It is, actually. Nora slid the prepaid phone back into the bag. "Stay for an hour?" "2. I need prescriptions and groceries." "I said 2. She left before gratitude could complicate the terms. At the pharmacy, the insurance claim failed because Evelyn's antibiotic had been refilled too soon after the dosage change. Nora stood beneath fluorescent lights while a technician made 3 phone calls. The prepaid phone rang in her purse. The downtown hotel's name appeared on the screen. Nora nearly dropped the bag. She answered beside a display of reading glasses. The executive chef introduced himself, then reminded her that she had missed her second interview. "I know. I'm sorry. I had a family medical emergency. We understood. Marcy spoke highly of you. Nora gripped the shopping cart. She did? Very highly. We have one more interview slot, Monday at 10. If you're interested, I can put you in. Monday at 10. The assessment Richard had scheduled was at 10:30. Yes, Nora said before she could lose her nerve. I'm interested. She bought the prescription, a new pair of non-slip shoes from a discount store, and a blouse that looked respectable if nobody examined the stitching. For 10 minutes in the fitting room, she imagined herself wearing the white chef's jacket from the box. A salary, health insurance, people saying her name because she ran the kitchen, not because someone needed help standing. When she returned, Caleb was cleaning oatmeal from the rug. What happened? Grandma wanted to eat in the chair, and she did not remain entirely in the chair. Evelyn waved from the bed. Gravity has been rude all day. Caleb had changed her cardigan after the spill and braided her thin hair into something loose and uneven. It looked terrible. Evelyn looked pleased. Nora set the pharmacy bag down. I have an interview Monday. Caleb grinned. The hotel? At 10. I'll stay with Grandma. You work. I'll tell Dad I'm late. The offer was so immediate that Nora's suspicion had nowhere to stand. You would do that? Don't make it a national holiday. He left after 2 hours and 20 minutes. Nora noticed because she noticed everything now. On Monday morning, she dressed in the bathroom while Evelyn criticized her blouse. It makes you look like you're selling expensive candles. It was $11. It makes you look like you're selling medium candles. Nora laughed and redid her hair. Caleb had promised to arrive at 9:15. At 9:20, he called. I'm coming, he said before she spoke. A truck dropped tile at the wrong site. Dad's losing his mind. Caleb, I'm leaving now. You're 40 minutes away. I can make it in 30. You cannot. He tried. Nora could hear the truck engine revving. At 9:38, the doorbell rang. Richard stood on the porch with a woman in navy slacks and a cream-colored coat. She carried a leather folder. This is Laura Mills, he said, from Briar Glen. Nora looked past them for Caleb. Richard noticed her blouse. Going somewhere? I have an interview. At 10? Yes, Caleb told me. Of course he had. Laura offered a careful smile. Mr. Bennett said this morning worked for the family. It doesn't. We're only here to speak with Mrs. Mercer. She said no. Then she can tell me herself, Richard said. Nora wanted to shut the door. Evelyn called from the living room. Let them in. I'm already wearing a bra. Laura's smile became genuine despite herself. Nora stepped aside. Richard smelled of aftershave and cold air. As he passed, he pressed an envelope into her hand. What's this? Home care receipts. I paid through the end of the month. You don't need to. Yes, I do. The answer contained no leverage, only fatigue. For a second, Nora saw the man who had slept in a plastic chair outside Ruth's hospital room, waking at every footstep. Then he went into the living room and began straightening objects that were not crooked. Laura sat beside Evelyn and asked sensible questions. Did she know where she was? Yes. Did she understand what assistance Briar Glen provided? Yes. Did she feel safe at home? Evelyn looked at Nora. Nora could see the fear beneath her defiance. Not fear of Briar Glen. Fear of needing so much that love became a locked door. I feel safe, Evelyn said. I do not feel easy. Those are different. Laura nodded. They are. Would you like to visit before deciding? No. May I ask why? I have spent 81 years collecting the right to dislike certain things without preparing a presentation. Richard crossed his arms. Evelyn, she turned to him. I know you think you are helping. I am helping. You are arranging. Because nobody else will make the hard decision. Evelyn's gaze sharpened. The fact that a decision is hard does not make it yours. Nobody spoke. Nora glanced at the clock. 9:56. Her interview was gone. Laura closed the folder. Mrs. Mercer has answered clearly. I don't see a reason to continue today. Richard stood motionless as Laura thanked them and let herself out. Nora's phone rang. The hotel. She looked at Evelyn, then Richard, then the new shoes by the door. She declined the call. Richard's face changed. Go. What? To the interview. I'll stay. Nora almost laughed. You just disowned me. I didn't say I'd let her fall out of bed. Evelyn looked from him to Nora. He knows how to make coffee. Poor coffee, but technically coffee. The phone stopped ringing. Nora picked up her purse and keys. At the door, she turned. Richard was adjusting Evelyn's oxygen line with hands that knew exactly how to do it. Evelyn was watching him, as if remembering someone she had once trusted with more than machinery. "Call me if anything changes," Nora said. Richard nodded. It was the first thing she had asked of him since Friday, and the first thing he had agreed to without correcting her. Nora made every light except the one at Granger Avenue, where a delivery truck sat through half a green arrow while its driver studied his phone. She slapped the steering wheel. "Come on." The truck did not respond to intimidation. At 10:07, she ran through the hotel's side entrance in new shoes that pinched both heels. The kitchen occupied most of the basement, all stainless steel and fluorescent light, with cooks moving around one another in practiced silence. Nora caught the smell of stock, hot bread, bleach, and rosemary. For one dizzy second, she wanted the job so badly she could taste it. The executive chef met her outside his office. Leonard Fox was a narrow man in his 50s with wire-framed glasses and a burn scar across one wrist. "You found us. I'm sorry I'm late. Are you usually?" "No." "Good. Sit down." He asked why she wanted to leave Marcy's. Nora said she was ready for more responsibility. He asked how she handled conflict between employees. She said privately, before resentment could recruit an audience. He asked what she would change about the hotel's banquet breakfast menu. She hesitated. "The eggs," she said. Leonard looked over his glasses. "What about them?" "They're overcooked before they leave the kitchen, and then they sit under heat." "You've eaten our banquet breakfast? My father's company had an awards dinner here. Did he complain about the eggs?" "He complained about the parking." Leonard almost smiled. "What would you serve?" she told him. "Not something extravagant. Smaller batches, softer eggs, roasted tomatoes with enough acid, biscuits that did not taste like freezer paper." As she spoke, the panic left her. Kitchens made sense, costs and timing made sense. Feeding 200 people was difficult, but at least everyone agreed it was the job. Leonard asked about her availability. "My grandmother is receiving home care," Nora said. "I'm her primary caregiver." His pen stopped. "I can work," she added. "I just need a dependable schedule. This position supervises breakfast and banquet prep. 5 in the morning most days, some evenings, weekends rotate. I understand. Do you have backup care?" Nora thought of Richard adjusting the oxygen line, Caleb racing between job sites, Denise's bright glasses. The word dependable sat between them like a dare. "I'm arranging it." Leonard closed her application, not dismissively, but not slowly enough. When she got home, Richard's truck was still outside. The house smelled like scorched coffee. Evelyn sat upright in bed with her hair combed and a clean cardigan buttoned correctly. Richard was at the sink washing the rooster mug. "No emergency?" Nora asked. "None," he said. Evelyn pointed to the mug. That coffee was an emergency. Richard dried his hands. "How did it go?" "I don't know. You were gone an hour and 20 minutes. I'm aware. I need to get back to work." Nora moved aside so he could pass. He stopped in the doorway. Her oxygen dropped to 92 when she walked. "I know it does that." She said it didn't. "She hates being watched. That doesn't change the number." Nora lowered her voice. "I know her numbers, Dad." He looked like he wanted to say more. Instead, he took his coat from the hook. "I'll call the agency about extending the visits. No more arrangements without asking her." "I said I'll call, not commit. Ask her before you call." Richard glanced at Evelyn. "She'll say no before she hears the question. That's still an answer?" "No, Nora. Sometimes that's fear wearing an answer's coat." Evelyn called. "I can hear both of you?" Richard shut his mouth. He left the envelope of paid receipts on the table and walked out without taking it back. Nora stood at the window until his truck disappeared. "He still whistles when he washes dishes," Evelyn said. "What?" "Richard. He used to whistle in the kitchen. I didn't hear him. He stopped when you drove up." Nora took off the blouse that made her look like a candle merchant and changed into an old sweatshirt. On the bathroom floor, she found blood on the back of both heels. The hotel called that afternoon. Leonard offered her the position. The salary was $6,000 more than Nora had hoped for. Benefits began after 60 days. He needed an answer by Wednesday and wanted her to start the following Monday. Nora wrote every detail on the yellow legal pad. When the call ended, she read the numbers aloud to Evelyn. "That's real money," Evelyn said. "It's medium money. It's real compared to diner money." Nora calculated the cost of morning care, then afternoon coverage on days the shifts ran long. Even with Richard paying 2 visits a week, more than half her additional income would disappear. She could manage if Caleb took Sundays, Richard covered 2 mornings, the agency never canceled, Evelyn never got worse, and Nora stopped sleeping entirely. Evelyn watched her scratch figures into the paper. Take it. I'm figuring it out. No, you're figuring out how to make yourself responsible for every possible failure. I need coverage. I can go to Briar Glen. Nora looked up. I said I could, Evelyn said. Not that I want to. You told Laura no, and you told Leonard yes long enough to interview. That's different. It is always different when the sacrifice belongs to you. Nora tore the page from the pad, folded it twice, and slid it beneath the sugar bowl. Let's not decide today. But the job sat in the kitchen with them. It followed Nora through the evening medication. It watched while Evelyn needed help changing her clothes after not reaching the commode in time. It waited beside the bed while Nora cleaned her grandmother's skin with warm washcloths and pretended not to notice her crying. On Tuesday, the agency canceled Denise because another client had been hospitalized. On Wednesday, Caleb promised to cover an hour, then arrived after Nora had already missed her shift. Richard offered to pay for full-time care if Evelyn moved to Briar Glen, but not for equivalent care at home. It costs nearly twice as much, he said over the phone. She doesn't want to leave, and you can't afford to stay. You mean you won't help unless you get the outcome you want? I mean, money has limits, only when I'm choosing how to spend it. He hung up first. Nora called Leonard on Thursday morning and declined the job. He was quiet for a moment. You'd be good here. I know. It was the first time she had said that aloud. Call me if your situation changes. Thank you. She put on her black diner pants and worked lunch at Marcy's. In the walk-in refrigerator, surrounded by tubs of coleslaw and boxes of lettuce, she cried for exactly 45 seconds. Then Della opened the door, saw her, and backed out without comment. A minute later, a slice of chocolate pie appeared beside Nora's station. Nobody admitted responsibility. The days shortened. The pharmacy changed Evelyn's antibiotic, then changed it again. A respiratory therapist brought new oxygen equipment. Caleb came when he could, and sometimes when he said he would. He learned to make oatmeal thin enough for Evelyn to swallow, and stopped asking Nora where everything belonged. Richard paid the home care bill through the next month. He did not visit. Every few days, a grocery delivery appeared with practical things Nora had not ordered. Laundry soap, tissues, coffee, adult briefs hidden beneath paper towels. Richard never included a message. Nora never thanked him. Evelyn grew light enough that Nora could lift her without help. She hated that most. One cold evening, Nora found her grandmother looking at the photograph of the yellow kitchen. You should put that away, Evelyn said. You keep looking at it, that's why. Nora sat on the edge of the bed. Were you and Mom fighting then? We were usually fighting. You look happy. We were usually happy too. People can manage both. Evelyn touched the glass. Ruth came to me tired, and I wanted her to make a decision. I thought a strong woman was one who left the moment she understood she should. Left Dad? Evelyn did not answer directly. I pushed, she said. She pulled away. Then I called her weak because I was frightened for her. Nora had never heard Evelyn call herself wrong without attaching an explanation that made her slightly less wrong. Did she forgive you? Sometimes. Then she changed her mind. That sounds like Mom. It sounds like everybody, if you know them long enough. Nora put the photograph back on the end table. I'm sorry about the job, Evelyn said. Don't. I made the decision. Yes, that's what makes it heavy. Evelyn's health narrowed over the following weeks. Her world became the hospital bed, the commode, the bird feeder, and the kitchen doorway where Nora appeared carrying medicine or soup. Dr. Patel spoke gently about comfort. The home health visits changed purpose. Nobody said there would be a recovery if they simply found the correct pill. Evelyn began sleeping through Franklin's morning visits. One night, she woke after midnight and asked Nora to open the curtains. The yard was dark except for frost shining beneath the porch light. There's nothing to see, Nora said. I know what's there. Nora opened them. Evelyn lay watching the black window. I don't want you proving anything after I'm gone. What does that mean? You'll know. I hate when people say that. I know. Nora pulled the blanket higher. You're not going anywhere tonight. Don't confuse stubbornness with a schedule. Go to sleep, Grandma. Evelyn turned her head. Promise me you won't spend your life showing people how much you can survive. Nora tried to make a joke and couldn't find one. I promise. You're lying? A little. Work on it. Nora slept in the green recliner with one hand resting on the edge of Evelyn's mattress. Near dawn, she woke because the oxygen concentrator sounded too loud. The room was blue with early light. Evelyn's face had gone still in a way sleep had never made it. Nora touched her shoulder, then her cheek, then pressed 2 fingers to the place in her neck where a pulse should have answered. Grandma, she knew. Still, she said the name again, louder, because knowing and accepting were different muscles. The photograph of Ruth and Evelyn stood on the end table, both women laughing on a porch Nora had never seen. Outside, Franklin landed on the bird feeder and scattered seed against the window. Nora sat beside the bed and held Evelyn's cooling hand until the room filled with morning. The first person Nora called was Denise. She did not know why. There were official numbers taped beside the refrigerator, but Denise answered on the second ring and said, "I'm coming," before Nora finished the sentence. Denise arrived wearing sweatpants beneath her winter coat. She turned off the oxygen concentrator, closed Evelyn's mouth with practiced tenderness, and helped Nora wash her face. Evelyn had hated being seen with sleep gathered in the corners of her eyes. "You don't have to do this," Nora said. "I know." They changed Evelyn into the red blouse she wore to appointments because she believed doctors treated a woman better if she had proper buttons. Nora fastened the pearl earrings Ruth had given her. One earring slipped twice because Nora's fingers would not work. Denise took it from her. "Breathe," she said. "I am not well." By the time Caleb arrived, the room looked orderly. The bed was made around Evelyn. The medication chart remained on the refrigerator, that morning's boxes waiting to be checked. Caleb stopped inside the front door. Nora watched him understand. He crossed the room slowly and sat on the edge of the couch. Was she alone? No. Was she awake? I don't know. His face folded. Nora sat beside him, and he bent forward until his forehead touched her shoulder. He was heavier than she expected. When they were younger, grief had always moved the other way. Ruth died, and Caleb had put one hand between Nora's shoulder blades while she shook. Now she held the back of his coat and stared at Evelyn's uncovered hand. Richard arrived 20 minutes later. He came in carrying his work gloves, saw Denise near the bed, and dropped them. Nobody spoke. He went to Evelyn and touched 2 fingers to her wrist. Nora almost told him not to bother. Then Richard lowered his head and pressed Evelyn's hand against his forehead. "Evie," he said. Nora had never heard him call her that. The name belonged to a history that had existed before the arguments, when Richard was a young husband washing dishes in Evelyn's kitchen and whistling because Ruth liked it. For one dangerous second, Nora felt sorry for him. Then he stood, wiped his face, and asked whether the funeral home had been called. Richard handled death the way he handled renovation work, in an order: transport, burial plot, service, flowers. He spoke in a voice polished smooth by necessity, and people obeyed him because instructions were easier than sorrow. When the funeral home attendants came, Nora moved to the kitchen. She could not watch them roll the bed through the doorway. She heard one wheel catch on the threshold, then Richard say, "Lift the foot end." The house went quiet afterward. The hospital bed left a rectangle in the rug where the pile had been protected from years of sunlight. Evelyn's cardigan remained draped over the recliner. Her water glass sat on the end table beside the photograph from Cedar Hollow. Richard picked up the glass. "Leave it," Nora said. "It needs washing. Leave it." He set it down. Caleb stood by the mantel looking at Ruth's photographs. "We should all stay tonight." Nora nearly asked where he had been the other nights, but the words felt cheap in a room Evelyn had just left. "I'm staying," she said. Richard looked at her. "I'll make arrangements tomorrow." She wanted something simple. I know what she wanted. Nora had to bite the inside of her cheek not to answer. Richard took his gloves from the floor and shoved them into his coat pocket. At the door, he said, "You did right by her." The words were so close to what Nora had needed that they hurt worse than silence. Before she could reply, he added, "Even if I didn't agree with how." There he was. Evelyn's funeral was held 4 days later in a brick chapel with carpet the color of weak tea. Richard ordered white lilies. Evelyn had disliked lilies because she said they smelled like a fancy person, covering up a plumbing problem, but Nora let it go. She had only enough strength for necessary battles, and flowers were already dead. Aunt Marlene came from Louisville in a camel-colored coat and hugged Nora too long. Marlene was Ruth's older sister by 6 years and had inherited Evelyn's fine cheekbones without her resistance to expensive moisturizer. She had called every Sunday during the final month, always at a time when someone else was bathing Evelyn or cleaning the kitchen. "You look exhausted," Marlene whispered. "Thank you." "I didn't mean, I know." Marlene squeezed her arms. "Your grandmother talked about you constantly. That sounds exhausting for you." To Nora's surprise, Marlene laughed. Then she covered her mouth and began to cry. Caleb delivered the remembrance because Richard said he could not. He told a story about Evelyn reporting a plumber to his own boss for overcharging her, only to learn she had called the same man both times. People laughed. Caleb looked startled by the sound, then steadied. Richard sat in the front pew between Nora and Marlene. During the final hymn, his hand lay palm up on his knee. Ruth used to take that hand in church. Nora remembered the motion more clearly than the hymns. She did not take it. Afterward, people gathered in Evelyn's house around trays of sandwiches no one wanted. Richard stayed near the front door, accepting condolences as if they were invoices. Marlene wrapped jewelry dishes in newspaper, then seemed ashamed and unwrapped them again. Caleb ate 3 pieces of pound cake without noticing. Nora found Richard alone in the kitchen, staring at Evelyn's legal pad. "She wrote down every time I called," he said. Nora looked over his shoulder. Richard's name appeared twice during the last month, once beside the home care payment, once beside the grocery delivery account. She wrote down everything, not everything. His voice was bitter. "No?" He turned a page. The hotel salary calculations were still there in Nora's handwriting. "You should call them back. The position's filled." "You don't know that. It's been weeks. You always decide no before someone else can." Nora took the pad from him. "You do not get to criticize the life your conditions helped create. I paid for care. After making help and dependent on moving her out. I changed my mind. You change part of it." Richard's mouth tightened. "You think I wasn't here because I didn't care? I think you weren't here. That isn't the same thing. No, it's just the part that happened." He looked past her toward the living room. "Your mother used to talk like that after spending time with Evelyn." Nora waited for the familiar accusation. It did not come. Richard rubbed one hand over his face. "I'm too tired for this. So am I." They stood on opposite sides of the kitchen island, both grieving women who had made them feel loved and accused in equal measure. The estate meeting took place 11 days later in a lawyer's office above a dental practice. Nora sat beside Caleb at a round table. Richard attended with him, though he was not one of Evelyn's heirs. Marlene arrived 7 minutes late, carrying coffee for everyone except Richard, then claimed it was an accident. The lawyer, Elaine Shue, spoke without ceremony. Evelyn's savings after final expenses went to Marlene, along with her jewelry and the contents of a small safe deposit box. The amount was modest enough that Marlene's shoulders dropped rather than rose. Evelyn's house went to Caleb. Caleb looked up sharply. The whole house? The property and remaining furnishings. Richard reached for the printed summary before Caleb did. His eyes moved down the page, already measuring rooms, debt, possibility. Elaine continued. The property near Cedar Hollow, approximately 40 wooded acres with a cabin and outbuildings, goes to Nora. Nora thought of the photograph beside Evelyn's bed. "What condition is it in?" she asked. Elaine glanced through the file. The county record lists the structure as seasonal. It has electrical service, a well, and a septic system of undetermined age. The taxes are current. Richard laughed. It was one short sound, more disbelief than humor, but everyone heard it. Caleb frowned. "What? That place is still standing?" "You know it?" Nora asked. Richard sat back. "I saw it years ago. It was half rotten then. Mom was there." He looked at her. "In the photograph from my box. She and Grandma were painting the kitchen." Marlene's coffee cup paused near her mouth. Richard returned his eyes to the summary. Ruth went there when she wanted to get away from things. "What things?" "Life, Nora." Marlene shifted in her chair. It meant something to her. Richard gave her a warning look. Nora caught it. "What?" "Nothing," Marlene said too quickly. "It was an old family place." Elaine slid a small envelope across the table. Inside were 2 keys labeled with fading tape and a card bearing the property address. Richard looked at Caleb's inheritance, then at Nora's. "Evelyn always did enjoy a statement," he said. "Caleb gets the usable property. You get the cleanup." Nora closed her hand around the keys. She wanted to say she did not care. She wanted to laugh with him and prove a ruined cabin could not wound her. Instead, she heard Evelyn telling her not to build a life around what she could survive. "I need some time in the house," she said. Richard turned to Caleb. "We should have a contractor in next week." "It's my house," Caleb said. The room went still. Richard's expression barely changed. "I'm aware. I can give Nora a month. A month delays listing. I'm not listing it next week." Marlene studied her coffee. Elaine organized papers that were already aligned. Richard nodded once, the way he did when postponing an argument, not conceding it. A month. It took Nora 2 weeks to pack. The medical equipment disappeared first. Then strangers collected Evelyn's rented bed, unopened supplies, and oxygen tanks. Each removal made the house look less like a place where someone had died and more like a property. Caleb left the kitchen alone. Richard marked walls with blue tape and discussed refinishing floors. Marlene took the pearl earrings and Evelyn's red blouse, then pressed the rooster mug into Nora's hands. "She'd haunt me if I took this," she said. Nora packed the mug beside the photograph, her chef's jacket, 2 pans, Evelyn's legal pad, and the least damaged sheets. Most of her life fit inside the Honda with space left over. Marcy offered her a couch. Della knew someone renting a room. Nora thanked them both and drove toward Cedar Hollow with $46 in her checking account, a box of groceries on the passenger floor, and directions that became less convincing with every mile. The paved road narrowed to gravel. Gravel narrowed to 2 muddy tracks beneath bare branches. Her phone lost service. Near sunset, she found a leaning mailbox with Mercer painted along the side. The cabin stood beyond it, dark and low beneath the trees. One porch corner sagged. Metal patches covered the roof like mismatched bandages. A shutter hung from a single hinge, tapping softly in the wind. Nora climbed the steps carefully and tried both keys. The second turned, but the swollen door would not move until she put her shoulder against it. Cold, damp air met her. She reached along the wall and found a switch. One bare bulb flickered to life above a scarred wooden table. Beyond it was a kitchen painted the faded yellow of summer squash. Nora stood in the doorway holding Evelyn's key, looking at the room from the photograph. She had inherited the place where her mother once laughed. The laugh was still in the room if Nora stood near the table and looked toward the porch. She set the photograph beside the bare bulb switch and tried to match its edges to the room. The yellow had once been brighter. The door behind Ruth was gone, replaced by warped cabinets with dark water stains along the bottoms. But the window was the same, and so was the long shelf beneath it. Nora put one hand on the table. "Okay," she said to the empty cabin. The cabin offered no opinion, which made it the first family property to extend her that courtesy. She went back to the Honda for her flashlight. The front room held a wood stove, 2 chairs, a couch covered by a gray sheet, and a stone fireplace that appeared to have been sealed before she was born. A short hallway led to 1 bedroom and a bathroom with a clawfoot tub, a green toilet, and a rusted hand pump over the sink. Nora turned the pump handle. It groaned. She pumped twice more. Something coughed deep inside the wall. A thread of brown water dribbled into the basin. Excellent. The toilet tank was dry. The electric baseboard heaters did nothing when she turned their knobs. The wood stove had a black pipe extending halfway toward the ceiling before ending in open air. Nora looked up at the hole where the rest of the pipe should have been. Even better. The bedroom mattress had collapsed in the center and smelled as though several generations of mice had included it in their wills. Nora shut the door. She brought in her boxes, pushed the couch near an outlet, and plugged in the small space heater she had taken from Evelyn's house. The lights dimmed, then recovered. She covered the couch with Evelyn's least damaged sheets and wore both winter coats to bed. At some point in the night, something scratched inside the wall behind her head. Nora sat up. The scratching stopped. "I cared for a dying woman," she said into the dark. "You cannot frighten me." The scratching resumed, unimpressed. She moved to the chair across the room. Morning arrived through cracks in the shutters. Nora's breath clouded in front of her face. The space heater glowed orange, but had succeeded only in warming a circle approximately the size of a dinner plate. She made coffee using bottled water and a saucepan. There were no curtains, so she changed clothes beneath her coats, nearly fell over while putting on her pants, and decided privacy was less urgent than circulation. Outside, the 40 acres looked less like property than an argument between trees. Bare oak and pine crowded the cabin. A narrow trail disappeared behind an outbuilding, with one wall leaning away from the others. The roof's metal patches were silver, green, and one startling piece of red. Frost covered the porch in the thin white scales. Nora found the electrical meter and was relieved to see it moving. The well equipment occupied a shed attached to the back. A metal tank sat beside a pump with wires that looked intact and pipes wrapped in crumbling insulation. Labels written on strips of masking tape had faded beyond recognition. She took photographs with her phone, then walked until she found one bar of service near the mailbox. The county clerk confirmed the electrical account could be transferred. The woman at the utility company required a deposit Nora did not have. After 15 minutes of polite pleading, Nora arranged to split it across 3 bills. The well company wanted $200 just to inspect the pump. "Does that include water?" Nora asked. "It includes diagnosis." "I've diagnosed it. It doesn't work." The man did not appreciate efficiency. Nora called Marcy next. "You alive?" Marcy asked. "Debatable. You coming in tomorrow?" The drive back to the diner had taken nearly 2 hours. Gas would consume most of what she earned on a short shift. "I can't keep doing evenings," Nora said. "Not from here." Marcy was silent. "I'm sorry." "Stop saying sorry when you mean broke. I'm broke. Better, less syllables. I can do Saturday doubles until I find something closer. You have somewhere to sleep? There's a couch." That wasn't my question. "It's indoors." "Nora, I'm okay." Marcy exhaled. People who are okay don't define housing by roof location. The wind lifted Nora's hair and pushed it across her mouth. She turned her back to it. "I need a little time. You have Saturday. After that, call me." The nearest hardware store was 12 miles away, in a town consisting of a gas station, a post office, 2 churches, and a diner named Ruthie's that made Nora stop the car before she realized how common the name was. Hale Hardware occupied a low brick building beside a feed store. A bell rang when Nora entered. The air smelled of lumber, rubber, and the dusty mineral scent of concrete mix. Behind the counter, a man in a canvas jacket was explaining toilet flappers to an older woman with silver hair cut close around her ears. "I don't want the cheap one," the woman said. "The last cheap one lasted 4 months. It lasted 4 years, Ada. 4 unpleasant years. You didn't know it existed until yesterday. That's how plumbing should be." Nora liked her immediately. The man looked past Ada. He was in his early 30s, with dark hair that needed cutting and a pencil tucked behind one ear. "Be with you in a second." Nora wandered to the stove supplies and found sections of black pipe in 3 different diameters. None had prices she could ignore. She was comparing elbows when he came over. "What are you connecting?" "Wood stove." "What size collar?" Nora showed him the photograph. He enlarged it with 2 fingers. 6-inch. "You need more than pipe." "I was afraid you'd say that." "Thimble may be damaged. Chimney cap's missing. I'd inspect the chimney before you light anything." "Can I inspect it?" "You can look at it. That's not what I asked." His mouth shifted, not quite a smile. "You can do anything you're willing to be wrong about." Ada had followed him down the aisle, carrying 2 toilet flappers, apparently unwilling to let shopping interfere with listening. "Where's the stove?" she asked. "Cabin off Mercer Road." Her eyes moved from the pipe to Nora's face. "Evelyn Mercer's place?" "Yes." Ada set the flappers on a shelf. "Who are you?" "Nora Bennett." Ruth's Nora? The wording struck her. Not Evelyn's granddaughter. Ruth's Nora. Yes. Ada studied her long enough to become rude, then reached forward and touched the sleeve of Nora's coat. "You have her eyes when you're suspicious." "Did you know my mother?" "I did." The man took the pencil from behind his ear. "Ada, maybe let her buy stovepipe before you interrogate her." "This is not an interrogation, Lucas. I haven't accused her of anything." He looked at Nora. Lucas Hale. Nora. Ada ignored the introduction. "Does the hand pump still squeal? It produces rust and emotional distress." "Same as ever?" "You've been there?" "Many times. Evelyn and I worked together at Mercer Supply before she retired. I was there during the ice storm." Nora looked at her. "What ice storm?" Ada's expression changed. You don't know? People keep saying that to me and then not finishing. Ada picked up her flappers again, though she no longer seemed interested in them. The county road flooded, she said. Ice brought down half the phone lines. Your grandfather tried to get the truck out, but a tree had fallen across the drive. Ruth decided she was coming, whether anybody was prepared or not. Nora understood each sentence separately. Together, they would not settle. My mother was born there, in the bedroom at the end of the hall. I wasn't a nurse yet, but I had enough training to follow instructions and enough fear to remember every minute. Your grandmother kept that cabin because it was the first place she held Ruth. The store seemed to grow very quiet, though somewhere near the front, a radio was advertising truck tires. Nora looked down at the stovepipe in her hands. My father called it a half-rotten fishing shack. Ada's mouth hardened. Your father called many things by names that made them easier for him. You knew him too? Some. What does that mean? It means stovepipe is not the place for the rest. Lucas cleared his throat. Ada. I know. For once she seemed to. Nora set the pipe on the floor before she dropped it. Why didn't Grandma tell me? You'd have to ask her. She died. Ada closed her eyes briefly. I'm sorry. Did Mom come back here? Yes. When? Off and on. More after she married Richard. She and Evelyn fought over the kitchen color for years, even though Ruth was the one who painted it. What color did Evelyn want? White. Nora laughed once, unexpectedly. Ada smiled. Ruth said white was what people painted a room when they were afraid to admit they had taste. That sounded enough like a person Nora had known that grief struck from the side. She turned toward the shelf and pretended to read a label. Lucas gave Ada a look. Ada nodded. I'm usually at Ruthie's around 9, she said. Coffee tastes burned, but they keep pouring it, if you want to talk. Nora did not promise. At the counter, Lucas totaled the stovepipe, chimney brush, sealant, cap, and heat-resistant screws. The number exceeded Nora's checking balance by $112. Take off the brush, she said. You need the brush, take off the cap, you need that more. Which thing do I not need? The new pipe, if the old sections are usable. The old sections are not there. He considered the photograph again. I have used 6-inch pipe behind the store. Came out of a house last month. Surface rust, no holes. How much? If you clean it, 40 for all 3 pieces. Why didn't you mention that first? You didn't mention being broke. Ada, waiting beside the counter, said, She shouldn't have to. Lucas gave her a tired look. Inventory is not a moral test. Nora bought the used pipe, sealant, screws, and a chimney brush. She had $9 left. Lucas helped load the pipe into her Honda. It extended between the front seats almost to the windshield. Don't light the stove until you've checked the chimney, he said. You've mentioned that. I'm mentioning it where the cold might help you listen. At the cabin, Nora carried the pipe inside and set it beside the stove. The room had become colder while she was gone. She took the photograph from her box and held it toward the yellow kitchen. Ruth and Evelyn were sitting only a few feet from where she stood. Then Nora went down the hallway and opened the bedroom she had shut against the smell. Dust turned in the light. The mattress sagged beneath a torn quilt. Nothing marked the floor where Ruth had first breathed. There was no plaque, no secret compartment, no explanation waiting beneath a loose board, only a room. Nora sat on the edge of a wooden chair near the window. Her mother had entered the world in this cold, stubborn place. She had returned as an adult and painted the kitchen yellow. Richard had known enough to call it an escape and had never thought Nora deserved to know why. She called Caleb from the mailbox. Did you know Mom was born here? What? At the cabin. Silence. Who told you? He asked. A woman named Ada Bell. No, I didn't know. Did Dad? I don't know. You could ask him. So could you. He doesn't answer me. Caleb exhaled. The house appraiser came today. Nora closed her eyes. Congratulations. That's not why I said it. Then why? I don't know. Everything is moving. Behind her, the cabin's loose shutter tapped against the wall. Not everything, Nora said. She ended the call, walked back inside, and opened the windows despite the cold. Then she dragged the ruined mattress onto the porch, swept mouse droppings from the bedroom, and scrubbed the yellow kitchen until night fell. She still had no running water and no safe heat. But for the first time since Evelyn died, Nora knew exactly why she was unwilling to leave. Unwillingness did not generate heat. By midnight, Nora had burned through the space heater's extension cord. The plug softened where it met the outlet, filling the room with the smell of hot plastic. She yanked it free, opened the front door, and spent 10 minutes standing in the cold while the air cleared. The scratching returned behind the wall. "You can have the cabin," she told the mice. "I'm going to the car." She slept in the Honda with the seat reclined and her winter coat pulled over her head. At 6, she woke with a gear shift pressed against her thigh and frost coating the inside of the windshield. Ruthie's diner opened at 5:30. By 7, the counter was crowded with men in work jackets and women wearing hospital badges. Nora took the last stool, ordered the cheapest breakfast, and wrapped both hands around a mug of coffee that tasted exactly as burned as Ada had promised. A woman behind the counter dropped toast into a trash can and yelled through the service window, "You did it again, Gary!" A man's voice answered, "Bread varies, not that much." Ada appeared at 9, wearing a red wool coat and carrying Evelyn's soup pot. Nora recognized the dent near one handle. She had eaten chicken and rice soup from that pot for most of Evelyn's final winter. "You had this?" "Evelyn lent it to me in 1998. That's not lending. It is if both people intend to return it eventually." Ada placed the pot on the counter. The woman working there immediately filled it with coffee packets and carried it out of the way as if Ada regularly arrived with cookware. "You slept at the cabin?" Ada asked. "In the car. That was not my question." "The cabin tried to set itself on fire without heat. You need to stay with me." "I'm fine. Your lips are blue. It's cold outside." Ada leaned toward her. "I have a guest room, hot water, and no emotional interest in making you grateful. That last part feels unlikely." "Reasonable." Nora added cream to the coffee. It remained bad, but changed color. "Tell me about my mother." Ada removed her gloves, finger by finger. Ruth was funny when she wasn't trying to be pleasant. Pleasantness ruined half her jokes. Nora looked at the countertop. "That sounds right." She'd come up to the cabin for a few days, sometimes a week. She repaired things, painted, planted herbs she forgot to water. Why did she come? At first because she liked it. Later because she needed quiet. From my father, from herself too. Ruth could argue with Richard all the way up here, even when he wasn't in the car. Ada told her about Ruth replacing the kitchen window after a branch broke it, cutting the trim crooked, then declaring straight lines a form of vanity. She had built shelves in the workroom and labeled jars of nails, washers, and screws. She had cooked when anxious and scrubbed floors when angry. Evelyn wanted her to leave Richard, Ada said. Ruth wanted Evelyn to stop making every visit into a campaign. Was Dad hurting her? Ada considered the question. He made the room smaller around her. "That was what I saw. I never saw him hit her, and I won't turn what I didn't see into what I did." But Ruth spent a great deal of energy arranging her feelings so Richard wouldn't have to trip over them. Nora heard her father telling her she always had reasons. "Why didn't Mom leave?" "I don't know that she didn't try. That sounds like you know something." "It sounds like I know Ruth had a life outside the parts she told me." The woman behind the counter set a plate of eggs in front of Nora. "I didn't order these. Gary made too many." From the kitchen, Gary shouted, "Eggs vary!" The woman rolled her eyes. "Eat!" Nora took one bite and knew exactly what had happened. The cook had added cold milk to eggs on a grill that wasn't hot enough. They were pale, wet, and somehow overworked. She ate them anyway. When the woman returned, Nora said, "Your grill's losing heat on the left side." The woman stopped. "You a health inspector?" "No." "Good, because Gary's sensitive. I'm a cook." Gary appeared at the service window. He was a large man in his 60s with a gray beard and an apron that had once been white. "You want to show me?" he asked. Nora looked at Ada. Ada lifted her coffee. "I don't work here." 10 minutes later, Nora stood behind Ruthie's grill adjusting the gas. Gary watched as she heated the surface properly and cooked eggs that held together without becoming rubber. The woman, whose name was Celia and who owned the diner, ate one standing beside the sink. "When can you start?" she asked. "I wasn't applying." "Good. Applicants lie." Gary crossed his arms. "You replacing me?" "You've been trying to retire since Easter," Celia said. "I enjoy trying." They needed someone to prep and work breakfast 4 mornings a week. The pay was slightly better than Marcy's because the shifts began at 4:30 and reasonable people were asleep. Nora accepted before she could invent a reason not to. She followed Ada home afterward for a shower. Ada's house sat behind the hardware store, a white bungalow with green shutters and 3 birdhouses that appeared aggressively maintained. Nora left dirt around the tub, despite scrubbing it twice. Clean clothes made her feel less like a trespasser in her own body. Ada wrapped a towel around her soup pot and handed it over. It belongs at the cabin. It belongs to you after 28 years. It belonged to Ruth before it belonged to either of us. Nora ran her thumb over the dent. Thank you. Don't turn it into a ceremony. Lucas's truck was parked at the cabin when Nora returned. He stood on the porch, looking up at the chimney with binoculars. How did you find me? There's one cabin on Mercer Road. I didn't ask you to come. Ada did. That sounds more accurate. He lowered the binoculars. I can leave. Nora looked at the used stovepipe in the back of her car, then at the dead space heater cord hanging through the open door. How much to inspect it? $75? I have $9. I can reduce the inspection, but I can't make materials free. I'm not asking you to. He glanced into the Honda. Evelyn's soup pot sat on the passenger seat. Ada said you cook. Everybody in this town reports to her. Most people. Some of us pretend otherwise. Lucas owned the hardware store with his older sister, who handled the business remotely from Nashville, and sent him increasingly hostile emails about inventory. Their late father had kept records in spiral notebooks. Lucas had moved the numbers onto a computer, but had not managed to make them match reality. What kind of bookkeeping? Nora asked. The embarrassing kind. I'm not an accountant. I need someone who understands that if I sell 12 pipe elbows, I should have 12 fewer pipe elbows. I understand subtraction. And dinner, 4 dinners. For an inspection? For inspection, chimney cleaning, and installing the pipe if the chimney's safe. That's too much work. So, is 4 dinners if you cook, like Ada says? Nora narrowed her eyes. What did Ada say? That Evelyn gained 6 pounds after you started caring for her. She was retaining fluid. Lucas laughed. It changed his face enough to annoy her. Fine, Nora said. 6 dinners and 2 afternoons of inventory. 4 dinners, 1 afternoon. I'm trying to make the trade fair. I'm trying to avoid spending 2 afternoons with you counting bolts. They settled on 5 dinners and 1 afternoon. Lucas climbed onto the roof while Nora held the ladder and tried not to imagine how much an emergency room visit would cost. He brushed creosote from the chimney, replaced the missing cap, and showed her a cracked section of mortar that would need repair before the next winter. If the roof lasts that long, he added, what's wrong with the roof? Which part? That is not a helpful question. He pointed to 3 patches lifting along the north side. Wind gets under those, you'll have water in the bedroom. How soon? Depends on the wind. I'm beginning to dislike rural answers. They're mostly weather. Inside, he checked the stove, cleaned the collar, and fitted the used pipe. Nora watched closely. You don't trust me, he said. I'm learning. That's a nicer sentence. She ignored him. The first fire smoked at the joints until Lucas adjusted the draw. Then the pipe warmed and the stove began giving off real heat, slow and solid. Nora held her hands toward it. Don't load it high and leave, he said. Keep the damper open until the flue's hot. Clean the ash before it reaches the grate. I can read instructions. You nearly melted an extension cord. Ada tells you everything? She saw the cord on your porch. Nora looked toward the porch. Ada's car was parked beside Lucas's truck. She came in carrying 2 water jugs and a grocery bag. I brought stew. I have a job now, Nora said. Congratulations. The stew remains. You cannot keep bringing things. Certainly I can. You may keep complaining. Lucas packed his tools. Ada opened the soup pot and poured in stew, as if restoring the natural order of the universe. After they left, Nora sat alone beside the stove. The cabin's boards creaked as warmth moved through them. She ate at the scarred table beneath the bare bulb, using a folded dish towel because she had not unpacked the pot holders. The soup pot looked right on the old stove. After dinner, she opened the attached shed and examined the jars along the workbench. Washers, copper, small nails, hinges with no mates, screws sorted by length. The handwriting on the labels belonged to Ruth. Nora had seen it on birthday cards, grocery lists, recipe margins, and the box Caleb delivered. Here it covered a dozen jars in thick black marker. Her mother's hands had organized this room, then returned often enough to replace labels when the ink faded. A narrow section of the bench sat lower than the rest, adjusted for someone Ruth's height. Saw marks scarred its surface. In a drawer, Nora found sandpaper, a tape measure, and a screwdriver with blue paint on its handle. She took the screwdriver inside. Her prepaid phone rang while she was tightening a loose cabinet hinge. Richard's name appeared. Nora let it ring 4 times before answering. "Caleb said you learned about Ruth," he said. "He said he didn't know whether you knew." "I knew." The admission came without apology. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because it was a birth story, not a religion. It mattered to Grandma. Everything connected to Ruth mattered to Evelyn. That was part of the problem." Nora gripped the screwdriver. "Did Mom go there to get away from you?" Richard was quiet. "She went there when she wanted people to confirm what she already felt." "What did she feel?" "You think Ada Bell can explain my marriage after telling stories over coffee? I think she knew Mom was born here. That puts her ahead of me. That cabin was cold, inconvenient, and full of people telling Ruth that leaving was the same as being brave. Was it?" "No." The force in his answer surprised her. Richard lowered his voice. "Your mother came home, Nora. More than once. Remember that before you turn a shack into evidence." The line went dead. Nora stood in the yellow kitchen with Ruth's screwdriver in her hand. Outside, the wind picked up. One of the roof patches scraped against the cabin with a metallic groan. Then rain began tapping overhead. Nora looked toward the hallway just as the first drop of water struck the bedroom floor. The second drop landed on the ruined mattress's bare frame. The third hit Nora's hair. Within 5 minutes, water was entering in 3 places. She set the soup pot beneath the worst leak, then immediately felt disloyal and replaced it with a plastic tub. A saucepan went beneath the window. The rooster mug caught a slow drip near the wall. Wind scraped metal across the roof. Nora carried the ladder from the shed and opened it beneath the porch light. Rain blew sideways into her face. Her phone buzzed as she searched for a flashlight. A message from Lucas read, "Do not get on that roof." She stared at it. Did Ada put a camera in the birdhouses? The reply came quickly. "Storm warning. Everyone with a bad roof thinks they can fix it in the dark." Nora typed, "What do smart people with bad roofs do? Move what can get wet. Put a tarp inside the attic if you can reach it. Buckets. Swearing optional. How optional? Encouraged." The cabin had no accessible attic, but Nora found a folded tarp in the shed. She climbed onto the bed frame and tacked it across the ceiling beneath the largest leak, angling one corner into a storage bin. Water followed the slope and poured where she directed it. The arrangement was ugly and effective. By 2 in the morning, the wind eased. Nora slept on the couch in damp socks, waking whenever a new drip found wood instead of metal. At 4, she changed clothes and drove to Ruthie's. Gary was already in the kitchen, drinking coffee beside a mound of onions. "You're late," he said. Nora looked at the clock. "I'm 6 minutes early. I like people earlier than early. I'm beginning to understand why retirement won't accept you." He handed her a knife. By 6, Nora had cut 20 pounds of onions, mixed biscuit dough, and learned that the grill's cold spot shifted when the left fryer was running. Her eyes burned from onions and lack of sleep. Celia took one look at her and slid a mug across the counter. "Cabin? Roof? Bad? It has developed indoor weather." Gary opened the oven. "Mercer Place always leaked." "You've been there?" "No." "Then how do you know? Everything old leaks." Celia pointed at him, including Gary. Gary nodded as if she had complimented him. Nora finished breakfast service, then drove to Hale Hardware for roofing cement. Lucas stood behind the counter reading something on his computer with the expression of a man receiving medical news. "You look cheerful," she said. "My sister wants to know how we sold -7 snow shovels." "Did you?" "I don't know. The computer says we did. Maybe 7 customers returned only the handles." He glanced up. "You slept." "Some." "You stayed off the roof?" "Physically. That answer concerns me." She bought 1 tube of roofing cement and charged it to the value of her first inventory afternoon. Lucas closed the store at noon and followed her to the cabin with a ladder tall enough to reach the north side safely. The storm had peeled back a green patch and loosened 2 sheets of metal. Lucas showed Nora where old nails had enlarged their holes as the metal expanded and contracted. "You can reseal this," he said, "but these sheets need proper fasteners." "How much?" "Materials, about 180. Labor depends on whether you insist on helping." "What if I insist on doing it?" "Then labor becomes emergency transportation." She climbed beside him anyway. The roof felt steeper under her boots than it had from the ground. Lucas clipped a safety rope to her belt and made her test it before moving. I'm not made of glass, she said. No, glass is predictable. He taught her to lift the patch without bending it, clear the debris, press sealing tape beneath the edge, and place screws in fresh metal instead of widening old holes. Nora worked slowly, her fingers numbed in the wind, but each fastener changed the roof from something happening to her into something she could understand. When they finished the temporary repair, Lucas sat on the ridge and looked toward the trees. You need a real roof before next winter. I've known you 2 days and you've already assigned me a year of problems. The porch needs piers. Well, tank may be shot. That shutter's trying to leave. Let it. He looked down at the chimney. Why are you staying? My mother was born in that bedroom. That's Ada's answer. It's also mine. I heard you. I'm asking why it makes you stay. Nora tightened the cap on the roofing cement. Because nobody thought I would. That's a bad reason. I have others. What are they? She looked through the branches toward the narrow road. I'm still meeting them. Lucas nodded as if that were enough. Caleb's truck appeared below, moving slowly between the trees. He parked beside the cabin and got out carrying a box from Evelyn's kitchen. What are you doing on the roof? He called. Roofing? With a hardware store manager? Lucas raised a hand. We're famously reckless. Caleb did not laugh. He stared at the safety rope, the patched metal, and Nora's damp boots. You inherited this place 3 weeks ago and you're already on the roof. You inherited a house 3 weeks ago and you already had it appraised. That's different. Everybody's sacrifices are different. Everybody's property decisions are different. It's a family motto. Caleb's jaw tightened. Lucas climbed down first. I'm going to check the well switch. I can do that, Caleb said. Great. I enjoy sharing blame. Nora stayed on the roof another second, regretting everything about the afternoon. Caleb had brought cookware, pantry jars, Evelyn's lemon dish towels, and the ceramic lamp without a shade from Nora's box. Dad was going to donate this stuff, he said. It was my stuff, I know. That's why I brought it. He could have called. You don't answer. He disowned me. He says you disowned him back. That isn't how sequence works. Caleb looked toward Lucas, who had wisely disappeared into the shed. Can we not do this in front of a stranger? He's repairing the house where Mom was born. That puts him ahead of several relatives. Caleb set the box on the table too hard. One pantry jar tipped and rolled. Nora caught it before it fell. I came to help. Then help without auditing my gratitude. He stepped back. For a moment, she thought he would leave. Instead, Caleb took off his jacket and hung it on the back of a chair. The porch is worse than the roof, he said. I've heard. I brought lumber. Why? Because I manage construction sites, Nora. We throw out pieces better than half this cabin. Richard would have called them offcuts. Caleb called them lumber because he knew she would reject scraps meant as charity. They unloaded pressure-treated boards and 2 short beams. Lucas emerged from the shed holding a corroded pressure switch. Pump's probably fine, he said. Contacts are burned. Caleb examined the switch. I have one of those in my truck. Lucas lifted an eyebrow. You carry well switches? Job yesterday. Supplier sent 2. You were going to return it? Eventually? Nora crossed her arms. Who paid for it? Dad's company. No. Caleb stared at her. It's $38. It isn't yours. I'll pay the company. With whose money? My own, Nora. Lucas put the old switch on the workbench. I'm open until 6 if everyone wants to turn this into a banking seminar. Caleb drove back to the store with him and returned carrying a new switch and a receipt bearing his name. Nora wrote $38 on Evelyn's legal pad under Caleb, along with the phone. You're impossible, he said. I'm consistent. That's impossible with better branding. The new switch brought the pump to life, but the pipes rattled so violently that all 3 of them lunged toward the shutoff. Lucas adjusted the pressure. Caleb opened faucets one by one. Rust-colored water spat from the bathroom pump and kitchen tap, then ran orange, yellow, and finally clear. Nora held a glass beneath the stream. Don't drink it yet, Lucas said. She looked at him. Bacteria test. Of course. But you can flush the toilet. It was a ridiculous victory. Still, when the tank filled and the green toilet flushed without flooding the floor, Nora clapped. Caleb laughed. Lucas bowed. They spent the afternoon bracing the porch. Caleb showed Nora how to support the corner before removing the rotted board. He kept trying to take the drill from her. She kept taking it back. At 3, Richard called Caleb. Caleb glanced at the screen, stepped into the yard, and returned several minutes later. "What?" Nora asked. "He wants me at the pharmacy site." "Go. I told him I'm busy." Nora stopped turning the screw. Caleb looked away. "Don't make it strange." "It is strange. It's Saturday. The job can wait." "Since when?" "Since I said." They finished the brace at dusk. Nora cooked the first of her 5 dinners in the yellow kitchen. She used Ada's stew as a base, added potatoes, browned onions, and made biscuits in the oven after Lucas declared it safe enough to use under supervision. Ada arrived without being invited and claimed the chair nearest the stove. Gary came because Celia had heard Nora was cooking and sent a pie as professional surveillance. Celia came 10 minutes later to ensure Gary did not steal credit for the pie. The scarred table seated 6 if nobody objected to knees. Lucas ate 2 biscuits before Nora sat down. Caleb had stew on his shirt. Ada told a story about Evelyn accidentally ordering 300 toilet seats for Mercer Supply and convincing the manufacturer the mistake was theirs. Gary argued that the pie crust was too thin. Celia told him his personality was too thick. Nora stood at the stove holding the soup ladle. The cabin sounded different with people in it. Floorboards creaked beneath shifting chairs. Silverware touched bowls. Heat clouded the kitchen window. Ruth's label jars were visible through the open shed door, and Evelyn's soup pot sat at the center of the table. Caleb looked around. Mom would have liked this. Nora sat across from him. She did. Nobody asked how she knew. After dinner, Lucas and Caleb carried dishes to the sink while Ada dried. Nora watched water run from the tap over plates people had eaten from in her mother's kitchen. For one evening, the cabin was not an inheritance, a wound, or a test. It was simply working. Working lasted until everyone left. Then the fire settled, the dishes filled the drying rack, and the cabin seemed to exhale. Nora stood alone in the yellow kitchen, listening to the pipes tick. Celia had written something on the back of a Ruthie's receipt and left it beneath the salt shaker. 6 seats times $35 equals $210. Below that, she had added minus food, minus tax, minus whatever Lucas eats before paying. Nora crumpled the receipt and dropped it into the trash. She took it out again before bed. At 4 the next morning, Ruthie's kitchen felt louder than usual. Gary was arguing with a case of frozen hash browns because the bags had been packed upside down. "They don't have an upside," Nora said. "Then why do they keep falling wrong?" Celia arrived at 6 with 3 reservations already written on an order pad. Nora held it away from herself. "What is this?" "People who want dinner next Saturday." "I'm not serving dinner next Saturday." "You served it yesterday." "I fed people who helped me." "Gary helped?" "I brought pie," Gary said. "You carried Celia's pie. Transportation is the backbone of commerce." Celia took the order pad and set it beside the register. "Warren Pike's been eating dinner alone since his wife died. Denise Campbell works weekends and hasn't had a meal she didn't microwave in 2 years. The Hales know everybody within 30 miles, and Ada has apparently described your biscuits to strangers at the post office. That does sound like Ada. 6 people, 1 seating. I handle reservations through the diner. We prep here, transport everything hot, and you finish at the cabin. Is that legal? You have a food handler certificate. Ruthie's has a catering permit. The county doesn't care whose old table people sit around as long as they don't get poisoned. That is not how regulations are written. It's the spirit." Nora stared at the reservations. "I don't have tested water. Use ours until you do. I don't have enough matching plates. Neither do we. The porch could collapse. Then feed them inside. I have 1 table." Celia crossed her arms. "Nora, if you don't want to do it, say you don't want to do it. Stop making the furniture responsible." Nora looked through the service window. An older man sat alone in a booth, cutting pancakes into precise squares. 2 women in scrubs shared toast at the counter without speaking, each scrolling through a phone. "How much would Ruthie's take?" Nora asked. "Food cost plus 10%. That's too little. 15, still too little. Don't negotiate against yourself. It's your permit, and your roof. They settled at 20% after food." Celia added a second condition. If Gary tried to advise Nora during service, Nora could throw a biscuit at him. Gary objected only to the waste. The well test cost $45. Nora filled the sterile bottle at the kitchen tap, drove it to the county office, and spent 3 days unable to drink anything without imagining bacteria. The result came back safe. Lucas found her at Hale Hardware, holding the paper like a diploma. "You have water," he said. I have certified water. You're becoming fancy. I'm charging strangers $35 to eat stew beneath a leaking roof. I have to create luxury somewhere. She spent her inventory afternoon in the store's back office. Lucas's late father had recorded purchases in pencil, sales in ink, and returns on whatever paper was closest. Nora found a receipt for plumbing fittings written on the back of a funeral program. "Whose funeral?" she asked. Lucas leaned over her shoulder. "Uncle Raymond." Did he approve the purchase? Raymond would have respected efficiency. The negative snow shovels came from a case Lucas had received damaged. He entered the replacement shipment, but not the discarded ones, then sold 7 from inventory that the computer did not believe existed. "You didn't sell negative shovels," Nora said. "You sold imaginary shovels. That feels worse." "It is." She created a simple return code, reconciled 3 months of stove parts, and discovered Lucas had ordered the same size furnace filter twice under different descriptions. You have enough filters to survive a dust apocalypse. People need clean air, not this much. He brought her coffee and a ham sandwich without asking what she wanted. The coffee had 1 sugar, the way she drank it at Ruthie's. Nora looked at the cup. Does Ada report beverage preferences too? I pay attention. The answer sat between them. Lucas picked up a stack of invoices. Don't make it strange. That's Caleb's line. Is it useful? Rarely. They worked until the store closed. When Nora stood, her back ached and numbers swam behind her eyes. But the shelves matched the screen within a tolerable margin. Lucas printed a report and stared at it. You fixed it. I corrected part of it. Let me enjoy things. You have 312 furnace filters. Enjoy those. He walked her to the Honda, carrying 2 bags of groceries for the first supper. I can come early Saturday and check the roof patch. That wasn't part of the trade. No. So, what do you want? To check the roof patch. People always want something. Sometimes the thing they say is the thing. Nora unlocked the car. That sounds made up. It's been true at least twice. Caleb arrived Friday evening with a pine board sanded smooth and a set of brackets. The shelf in the kitchen sags, he said. You drove 2 hours because my shelf hurt your feelings? I had a meeting nearby. Where? Carlisle. That's 40 minutes in the opposite direction. He carried the board inside. You want the shelf or not? They replaced the warped one beneath the kitchen window. Caleb had stained the new board a warm brown that matched the table. He lined up the brackets 3 times before drilling. Dad got the appraisal, he said. Nora continued marking screw holes. You mean you got the appraisal, both of us. It's your house. It could fund the expansion. She stopped. What expansion? Bennett Residential can bid on the courthouse annex remodel, but we need equipment and payroll reserve. How much? Enough. You're borrowing against Grandma's house? Maybe. Why not sell it? Because Dad thinks the market will improve by summer. Dad thinks many things about property he doesn't own. Caleb set down the drill. He built the company. And you work there. I run half the jobs. Then why is his name on every sentence? His face closed. Nora regretted the question, but not enough to remove it. The commercial contract changes everything, he said. We stop chasing kitchen remodels and insurance repairs. If you get it, we have a strong bid, and if you don't, Caleb picked up the level. You sound like Dad when he wants me to say no. I'm asking what happens. You think because you inherited the one property nobody wants, you're free from decisions. Nora looked around the cabin. The space heater was gone. Clean water ran. The porch corner no longer dropped beneath her weight. None of it had appeared because she was free from decisions. I'm not telling you no, she said. I'm telling you the house is the first thing in your life Dad can't fire you from. Caleb stared at the new shelf. That's dramatic. It can still be true. He finished mounting it without replying. On Saturday, Nora worked breakfast at Ruthie's, slept for 90 minutes in the cabin's bedroom on a used mattress Ada helped her find, then returned to the diner to prep supper. Celia had printed small menus. Mercer Cabin Saturday. Table chicken with mustard and herbs, mashed potatoes, roasted carrots, biscuits, apple cake. Nora ran one thumb over the words. You named it. I had to call it something. It sounds official. We're charging tax. It is official. The 6 guests arrived within 10 minutes of one another. Denise drove the farthest and hugged Nora hard enough to wrinkle her apron. Warren Pike brought a jar of pickled beans because he felt wrong arriving empty-handed. The two nurses from Ruthie's counter, Sandra and Kit, came directly from a 12-hour shift. Ada paid despite Nora's objections. The sixth seat belonged to Vernon, a retired electrician who spent the first 5 minutes examining the bare bulb. "I have a fixture in my garage," he said. "You are here to eat. I can do 2 things." Lucas came early, checked the roof, then stayed in the kitchen because Nora had underestimated how long 6 chicken breasts would take in the old oven. "You're not a guest," she said as he sliced biscuits. "I know. You have to leave before people think I hired you." "Did you?" "No." "Then our records agree." The meal began stiffly. Warren unfolded his napkin twice. Sandra apologized for smelling like antiseptic. Kit said if she could still smell antiseptic, she had stopped noticing herself. Then Denise recognized Evelyn's soup pot on the stove. "She once threatened me with that," she said. Nora turned from the counter. "Why? I told her canned soup counted as lunch." "It does," Warren said. "Not to Evelyn." Ada lifted her glass. Evelyn considered cans an attack on agriculture. Stories began moving around the table, not grand stories. Denise described Evelyn hiding medication beneath a napkin. Ada told them about the toilet seat order. Vernon had once repaired the cabin's electrical service after Ruth wired an outlet backward. He pointed to the workroom. She labeled every wire after that. Nora looked at him. "You knew Mom?" "Enough to turn off the breaker before touching anything she'd fixed." Everyone laughed. Nora was carrying plates when she realized no one at the table required her to defend Ruth or Evelyn. They remembered both women incorrectly and affectionately, the way real people survived. At dessert, Sandra asked whether Nora would do another supper. "We'll see." Celia, who had arrived to collect payment and inspect the service, said, "That means yes." After the guests left, Nora counted the money at the yellow table. Food, Ruthie's percentage, and tax reduced the amount quickly. She still had $118. It was not enough for a roof. It was enough for the proper fasteners and 2 more weeks of groceries. Lucas washed glasses at the sink. "You looked happy. I was working." "Those aren't opposites." "They have been." He dried his hands and came to the table. "Ada says there's already a waiting list." Nora groaned. "Ada needs supervision. You could do 2 Saturdays a month. I work 6 mornings a week. 4. Gary keeps not retiring. 5 then." Nora folded the money into Evelyn's legal pad. "If I do it again, it needs a better system. Prep list, reservations paid ahead. No surprise electricians evaluating the fixtures." Vernon brought the fixture. On the porch sat a cardboard box containing a simple pendant light. A note on top read, "For the next supper." Nora looked through the open door at the bare bulb, the clean plates, and Ruth's photograph propped beside the switch. For once, the next thing waiting for her did not feel like a threat. Vernon installed the pendant light for a plate of biscuits, and the right to complain about the wiring. "You have 3 circuits doing the work of 1.5, he said from the ladder. "That sounds backward." "It is." "Will the cabin burn down?" "Not if you stop plugging heating appliances into extension cords." Lucas, holding the ladder, looked at Nora. She pointed toward the kitchen. "There are biscuits in there. You could both speak less." The new light hung low over the table, its amber shade warming the yellow walls. At the next supper, everyone leaned toward it as if the food were being served beside a small fire. Nora developed rules. Reservations had to be paid by Thursday. Dietary restrictions had to be stated before she bought groceries, not while she held a full plate. Gary was not permitted to call gravy a beverage. Ada could invite 1 person per supper without asking, but not 2, a distinction Ada considered bureaucratic oppression. The table filled. A man who had cared for his husband through a long neurological illness came and spent most of the meal listening. 2 respiratory therapists drove in from the county hospital. A woman named Paula, who managed her older sister's medications from 3 states away, cried over mashed potatoes and apologized until Denise told her tears were mostly salt and therefore seasoning. Nobody arrived because the cabin was where Ruth had been born. Most did not know. They came because 6 seats made it difficult to disappear, and because Nora remembered who disliked onions, who took coffee after dessert, and who needed a container to carry home half a meal without being asked why. She did not call it caregiving. She called it service. That distinction allowed her to charge money. By the 4th supper, the legal pad contained separate columns for food, Ruthie's percentage, electricity, repairs, and income. The income column remained the smallest. Every time it grew, the cabin found something new to demand. The bathroom pipe leaked beneath the floor. The oven thermostat read 25 degrees low. 2 porch boards softened after rain. Lucas drew a red circle around the worst section of the roof on an estimate and wrote, "Before fall," in letters large enough to feel insulting. Nora bought a used chest freezer from a man Celia knew. It fit beneath the workroom window and made a low humming sound that became comforting. She could buy meat when it was discounted, freeze biscuit dough, and stop transporting everything from Ruthie's in coolers. "This is how empires begin," Gary said when they unloaded it. With a dented freezer, most empires have worse equipment. Nora's empire earned $243 in its first full month. The electric bill was $211. She placed both numbers beside each other and tried not to hear Richard laughing in Elaine Shue's office. Caleb visited less often. When he did come, his phone rang constantly. He stepped outside to answer Richard, returning with his mouth drawn tight. One evening, he arrived after dark carrying a new kitchen faucet. "I didn't ask for that," Nora said. "The old one drips. The old one has personality. It has bad washers. They work beneath the sink with their shoulders pressed together." Caleb tightened connections while Nora held the flashlight. "Loan closed," he said. Nora moved the beam toward his face. "What loan?" "The business loan. Against Grandma's house. It's my house." "I know. You say that like an accusation." "I say it because Dad seems to forget." Caleb shifted onto his back beneath the cabinet. "We got the equipment. 2 compact loaders, new trailer, payroll reserve, and the annex contract. Final decisions next week. You borrowed before you got it. That's how expansion works. That's how risk works." Caleb pushed himself out. "You charge people to eat in a building that leaks. I spent what I earned. You inherited 40 acres. 40 acres doesn't pay a bill unless I sell it." "Exactly." Nora sat back on her heels. "Did you want the loan?" He picked up the wrench. "Yes." The answer came quickly enough to be either true or rehearsed. "Okay," she said. "Okay, it's done. That's all. What do you want? A speech? I want you to stop looking at me like I'm Dad's puppet, then stop waiting for him to tell you when you can move." Caleb fitted the new faucet without speaking. When he turned the water on, a connection sprayed both of them in the face. Nora gasped. Caleb lunged for the shutoff, hit his head beneath the sink, and swore. For a second, neither moved. Then Nora began laughing. Caleb sat on the floor, soaked from the chest up, one hand pressed to his head. "I hate this place. You bought the faucet. I hate myself too." She handed him a towel. His laughter joined hers reluctantly, the way it always had. The courthouse annex contract went to another company. Caleb called Nora from a parking lot and told her before he told Marlene, Ada, or anyone else who did not need to know. "We came in 8% high," he said. "What happens now?" "Dad says we increase residential volume." "Do you have the crews?" "We have equipment. That wasn't my question." "No, Nora, we don't have the crews." She could hear traffic and Richard's voice somewhere behind him. "I have to go," Caleb said. "Are you okay?" "Fine." He hung up with the same lie Evelyn had used for months. The freezer failed on the Friday before Nora's largest supper. She discovered it at 5 in the morning when she reached inside for chicken and found the packages soft. The freezer's hum was gone. Melted ice had spread beneath bags of biscuit dough and containers of stock. Nora checked the plug, the breaker, and the temperature gauge, as if one of them might admit to joking. The chicken smelled wrong. So did the beef she had bought for a catering order. Butter had softened into misshapen blocks. The stock was warm. She stood in the workroom, holding a package that had cost $19 and understood there was nothing to save. At Ruthie's, Celia helped her calculate the loss. $314, Nora said, plus the freezer. "I'm not counting the freezer. It's broken. I have chosen not to know that." Rain struck the diner windows. A weather alert appeared on Celia's phone. High winds, flash flooding, travel discouraged after 6. The supper was scheduled for 7. "We cancel," Celia said. "They paid. We refund them. I spent the money on food that's currently becoming a public health incident. Then we credit the next supper." "What if they don't want the next supper? They will. You don't know that?" Celia studied her. "This isn't about reservations." Nora carried a crate of spoiled food to the dumpster behind the diner. Rain soaked her hair and ran beneath her collar. One by one, she threw away chicken, beef, stock, butter, dough. She had spent hours preparing some of it and shifts earning the rest. Gary came outside, holding an umbrella too small for him. "Freezers fail," he said. "Thank you, Gary. Mine failed in '97. Did yours contain nearly everything you owned?" "No, mine contained 6 turkeys and something I believe was venison." "You're bad at comforting people, I know. Celia sent me." He held the umbrella over Nora while she dropped the last bag into the dumpster. The storm canceled supper. Wind pulled one roofing patch loose, though Lucas secured it before water reached the bedroom. The utility company sent a late notice because Nora had paid the wrong amount after misreading the deposit installment. By Monday, she owed more than the next 2 suppers could earn. She wrote "cancel future tables" across the top of the legal pad. Richard arrived that afternoon. His truck looked enormous beside the cabin. He stepped onto the repaired porch and examined the roof, the new light through the window, and the small wooden sign Celia had painted near the door. "Mercer Cabin, Saturday Table." "What are you doing here?" Nora asked. "Caleb isn't answering. He's working. He's avoiding me." "Then you should probably keep calling. People love that." Richard's gaze moved around the kitchen. 6 mismatched plates were stacked beside the sink. Reservation cards stood in a jar near the door. Ruth's photograph remained beside the light switch. "Caleb says you're running a restaurant. I host 2 suppers a month through Ruthie's catering permit. Here. Yes. In the house where your mother was born." Nora went still. "So you admit you knew. I never denied it. You hid it. I didn't build a shrine around it. No. You called it a shack." "It is a shack. It mattered to Mom." Richard looked at the yellow cabinets. Something crossed his face too quickly for Nora to name. "Ruth came here when she wanted an audience for leaving," he said. "Did she find one? Evelyn, did she leave?" "She came home. Because she chose you." His jaw tightened. "Because marriage is not a story strangers tell after dinner. I don't tell them about Mom. You're charging people to sit in her escape. I'm feeding them. You always find a way to make sacrifice look like a profession." Nora felt the words reach their old target. For years, she had mistaken the pain of being accurately wounded for proof the accusation was true. She picked up the legal pad and held it out. "I canceled the suppers." Richard looked at the words. "The freezer broke. The storm cost me a service. The electric bill's late. If you came to tell me this doesn't work, congratulations. The cabin told me first." His expression changed, but not into satisfaction. "You can sell the land," he said. "Pay off whatever you owe. Start over somewhere sensible." "Is that what you told Mom?" "I told Ruth not to confuse running away with becoming free and staying. I told her we could fix things. Did you?" Richard looked at the photograph. "Some." It was the most honest answer he had given her. He walked to the door, then stopped beside the reservation jar. "Your mother hated mustard." Nora frowned. "She cooked chicken with mustard. She ate around it. Evelyn liked mustard." He left before Nora could ask anything else. Lucas came after closing the store. He found Nora in the workroom, scraping spoiled liquid from the freezer's bottom. "Compressor's dead," he said after testing it. "I assumed it was resting." He sat on an overturned bucket. "You can use the store freezer. I'm closing." "No, you wrote a sentence in a bad mood. I can't keep using everyone else's equipment and calling it a business." "Then don't. Call it temporary." "Temporary is how people avoid admitting something doesn't work." Lucas watched her scrub. "Who said that?" She looked at him. "Your phrasing changes after Richard visits," he said. Nora threw the rag into the bucket. "Please don't understand me right now." "All right, I mean it. I know." He did not leave. Nora sat on the floor opposite him. The ruined freezer stood open between them. "I made $243 last month," she said. "I worked every Saturday and half the nights. The electric bill was almost that much. Then the prices or the system are wrong, or the idea is. Do people want the dinners? Yes. Do you cook well? Yes. Can you keep losing money? No." Lucas nodded. "That sounds like 3 facts, not a funeral." At Ruthie's the next morning, Celia had moved the canceled reservations to a new date. Every guest accepted the credit. Sandra and Kit wanted Nora to cater a hospital staff dinner for 24. Warren asked whether he could buy 4 suppers in advance. Denise had left $70 in an envelope for 2 future seats, with no argument written across the front. Nora looked at Celia. "Did you ask them to do this?" "No." "Ada?" "Ada doesn't know yet. That may be the first secret Cedar Hollow has kept from her." Celia pulled out a calculator. They raised the supper price by $5, reduced the menu to dishes that used the same base ingredients, required advance payment, and moved all cold storage to Ruthie's until Nora could afford a reliable freezer. Catering orders would pay a fixed kitchen fee instead of a percentage. Nora crossed out "cancel future tables." Beneath it, she wrote the next date. When she returned to the cabin, Lucas was measuring the strip of ground along the kitchen wall. "What now?" she asked. "Covered cooking area. Nothing fancy. Roof, counters, weatherproof outlets. Keeps heat out of the cabin in summer. I cannot pay you. I know. No more imaginary trades. I need weekly meals. You need labor. We write down the hours and food costs so neither of us gets noble." Nora considered him. 5 meals don't equal construction. Then when the account stops being even, we stop. "And materials? You buy them." "With what?" He nodded toward the reservation jar. "One working supper at a time." Nora opened Evelyn's legal pad and drew 2 new columns. For the first time, she did not label either one debt. The columns stayed almost even. Lucas worked 6 hours framing the covered cooking area. Nora supplied 3 dinners, 2 breakfasts, and enough coffee to make sleep theoretical. He installed weatherproof outlets while she painted salvage cabinets. She helped hang the corrugated roof, moving more confidently above the ground than she had during the first storm. When Lucas's labor moved ahead of the food, he stopped. "You could finish the counter," Nora said. "You're $14 behind. I'll make lasagna. Your lasagna costs $9.60 per portion. You calculated it? You wrote it down. That is an offensive use of my system." He leaned against the unfinished frame. "We agreed neither of us gets noble." "I'm not being noble. You're trying to owe me attractively. There is no attractive version of owing someone." Lucas looked at her long enough to make the air beneath the new roof feel warmer. "I disagree," he said. Nora went inside and made lasagna. The hospital catering order paid for half of a refurbished freezer. The next 2 suppers paid for proper metal fasteners and the first bundle of roofing panels. Warren prepaid for seats and used them slowly, sometimes giving one to someone who had recently lost a spouse. Denise came whenever she had a free Saturday. Sandra and Kit began volunteering to carry dishes from Ruthie's because, according to Sandra, any job without fluorescent lights counted as leisure. Nora's life became a chain of lists: 4:30 prep, breakfast service, supply order, sleep if possible, supper reservations, hardware inventory, roof materials, electric bill, water filter, Lucas's dinner account. Everything went into Evelyn's yellow legal pad until the pages curled and the cover separated. The cabin stopped losing ground. One afternoon, Nora found the first green shoots of herbs beneath the kitchen window. Ada identified thyme, mint, and one determined rosemary plant that should not have survived the winter. "Ruth planted that," Ada said. "How do you know?" Evelyn hated rosemary, said it tasted like furniture. Nora knelt in the dirt and touched one silver green leaf. Mom loved it. She put it in everything. Dad hated it. That may have been part of the appeal. Nora used the rosemary and chicken for the next supper. Richard did not come again, but his opinion arrived through Caleb. The residential expansion had produced more jobs and less money. Fuel costs rose. A client delayed payment. One compact loader needed a repair not covered by warranty. Richard increased crews anyway, saying the company had to grow through the pressure. Caleb began missing cabin visits entirely. When he finally came, he looked thinner and carried no lumber, faucet, or object that allowed him to pretend he had stopped only to deliver something. Nora found him sitting on the porch steps before sunrise. "You know it's illegal to be awake before my shift unless you're cooking," she said. "I haven't been to bed." She unlocked the door. Inside, Caleb stood near the stove while Nora started coffee. His polo was wrinkled. Dust marked one sleeve, and a dark stain covered the toe of his boot. "What happened?" Hydraulic line burst. "To you?" "Loader. I'm sorry for the loader. Thank you." He rubbed both hands over his face. "Dad wants me to take out another line." "Against what?" "The house has more equity. The house already secures the first loan. It can support more." Nora set the coffee scoop down. "Can it?" Caleb's expression answered. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want him to stop talking like one more job fixes every bad job before it." "Have you said that?" "He says I'm panicking." "Are you?" "Yes." "Then say that too." Caleb sat at the table. "You make everything sound simple after you've decided." "No, I make it sound simple after doing the wrong thing several times." You know what he'll say, that you don't believe in the company, that I was happy to inherit Grandma's house, but not willing to risk it. It's yours to risk, I know, and yours not to. He stared into the empty coffee mug. Nora poured for both of them. You came here before going home. I didn't want to be at the house. Why? Every room looks like collateral now. That was the first time Caleb spoke of Evelyn's inheritance as something that had happened to him rather than for him. Nora slid the sugar across the table. Stay until I leave for work. He nodded. The next week, the dates circled on the wall calendar seemed to darken each time Nora passed it. Ruth's birthday. Nora had spent 6 years pretending the day was ordinary because Richard preferred remembrance in approved doses. One photograph on the mantel. Flowers at the cemetery. Dinner somewhere Ruth used to like, provided nobody mentioned the years when she had not liked Richard. Nora called Marlene. I'm having supper at the cabin, she said. No reservations, no charge. Just people who knew her. Marlene was quiet. On her birthday? Yes. Does Richard know? It isn't his invitation to manage. That is not an answer. No. Marlene exhaled. He'll hear? How? Families are terrible at secrets and excellent at leaks. Will you come? Another silence, longer this time. Yes, Marlene said. Ada accepted before Nora finished asking. Denise traded a shift. Lucas said he would cook if Nora wanted, then amended that to chopping things after seeing her expression. Nora held the last seat for Caleb. He arrived at Ruthie's near closing and leaned through the service window. Dad canceled the second loan meeting, he said. You talked to him? We yelled in a parked truck. Did it work? He called me ungrateful. That means he heard you. Gary placed a plate of bacon between them. Yelling needs protein. Caleb took a slice. Nora told him about the supper. Can I come? She looked at him. You don't have to ask. I think I do. Then yes. He ate another piece of bacon. Dad will find out. Marlene gave me the family leak briefing. Do you want me to tell him? No. Caleb nodded, but not in agreement. On Ruth's birthday, Nora closed the Saturday table sign and turned away 3 people who had not seen the private notice. She carried the long pine board Caleb had brought months earlier into the yellow kitchen and used it as a serving shelf beneath the window. Marlene arrived with a grocery store cake. I know you made dessert, she said. Ruth liked bad frosting. The frosting was bright green. Why that color? It was the only one without roses. Ada brought the soup pot, even though it already lived at the cabin. Denise brought coconut donuts because Evelyn would have demanded them. Lucas brought rosemary from his own garden and did not say the cabin's surviving plant looked healthier. Caleb came last, wearing a clean shirt and carrying Ruth's photograph from the county fair. I thought it should be here, he said. They placed both photographs near the new pendant light. Ruth with Nora and Caleb at the fair, and Ruth laughing with Evelyn on the porch outside. Nora served mustard and herb chicken, mashed potatoes, carrots, and biscuits. Richard's comment about Ruth hating mustard had bothered her enough that she changed the recipe twice. In the end, she put mustard on the table in a small dish and left it out of the chicken. She would have appreciated the argument, Marlene said. The first 20 minutes were awkward. Everybody had a different Ruth and seemed afraid the versions might fight. Then Denise admitted she had never met her. I only know what Evelyn said when she was irritated, she explained. What did she say? Caleb asked. That Ruth could make a decision, regret it, reverse it, and still be offended nobody supported the original. Marlene laughed so hard she nearly spilled her water. That is absolutely her. Ada told them Ruth once spent 2 days wallpapering the cabin bedroom, decided the pattern made her feel watched, and tore it all down before Evelyn saw it. Caleb remembered Ruth singing along to commercials, but refusing to sing actual songs because she claimed jingles had better structure. Nora told them about the time Ruth put rosemary in chocolate cake. She said it was sophisticated, Nora said. It tasted like a Christmas tree, Caleb replied. The knock came during dessert. Nobody knocked at the cabin. People either called ahead or entered while shouting Ada's name as a warning. Nora opened the door. Richard stood on the porch. He wore his dark wool coat, the one from Evelyn's funeral. His eyes moved past Nora to the table, the green cake, and Ruth's photographs beneath the light. Caleb told you, Nora said. Caleb stood behind her. I said I was coming. Richard looked at him. You said family dinner. It is. Apparently not all family. Ada set down her fork. Marlene closed her eyes briefly, as if a prediction becoming correct was still disappointing. Nora remained in the doorway. You weren't invited. No, I gathered that. Then why are you here? Richard looked beyond her again. Because she was my wife. The words were not loud. That made them harder to dismiss. Nora stepped onto the porch and pulled the door mostly closed behind her. You don't get to claim her only when someone else remembers her. And you get to feed strangers in the place she ran to every time our marriage became difficult. They aren't strangers. They were a month ago. So were you, after you disowned me? Richard flinched. Inside, a chair scraped. Caleb opened the door and stepped out. Dad, go home. Richard's attention shifted. This is what you came here for? To sit around a table and tell each other I ruined Ruth? Nobody was talking about you. Of course you were. This whole place is about me now. Evelyn made sure of that. Nora looked through the doorway at the yellow kitchen, the covered cooking area visible beyond it, the legal pad beside the reservation jar. This place is not about you. It exists in this family because your mother used it to threaten leaving. She came here before you. She was born in that bedroom. And now you're selling dinners under her name. I'm feeding people under Grandma's permit pot and my own labor. Mom's name isn't on the sign. You know what you're doing. Yes, Nora said. For the first time, I do. Richard stepped closer. You think inheriting a story makes your version true? No. Living here showed me something you never did. Mom kept returning to the one place where she could take up room without apologizing for it. You did not live our marriage. No. I lived what came after it. The explanations, the silences, the way you made Grandma guilty enough that I stayed away from her until she was dying. Evelyn pushed Ruth to leave, and you pushed her to stay. Neither of you asked what it cost to keep pushing. Richard turned to Caleb. Are you going to stand there while she rewrites your mother? Caleb's face had gone pale. Mom asked you to bring her here, he said. The wind moved through the trees. Nora heard the loose shutter tap once against the wall. Richard said nothing. The last year, Caleb continued. After the treatment stopped working, she asked in the kitchen. I was there. Caleb, Richard said, you said the road was too rough. She was sick. I offered to drive. You had no idea what her condition required. You told her if she came up here, Evelyn and Ada would fill her head until she didn't want to go home. Nora looked at her brother. He had known. Caleb's voice cracked. She was dying, Dad. What home were you protecting? Richard's face changed as if Caleb had struck him. She was frightened, he said. She needed stability. She needed a ride. You don't understand what those months were like. I understand I said nothing, because agreeing with you was easier. Richard looked from Caleb to Nora. His grief was real. So was the control braided through it. Nora could see both, without allowing either to excuse the other. You disowned me because I stayed with Grandma, she said. You called care an escape because you couldn't control where it led. I am done proving what happened to people who only listen when they can remain innocent. Richard's eyes glistened. So that's it? No. That was it 3 months before Grandma died. This is me finally believing you. He looked toward the table one last time. Come on, Caleb. Caleb did not move. Richard waited. Then he walked down the steps alone. His truck started beneath the trees. Red taillights moved along the narrow road and disappeared. Nora stood on the porch until the engine could no longer be heard. Inside, the cake waited beneath the warm pendant light. No one pretended the evening had not broken open. Caleb sat at the table and covered his face with both hands. Nora returned to the kitchen, cut the green cake, and placed a slice in front of him. It was not forgiveness. It was food. It was terrible cake. The frosting tasted like sweetened shortening, and the cake beneath it was dry enough to absorb conversation. Everyone ate anyway. Marlene took a second slice. Ruth loved this kind, she said. She loved grocery store frosting? Lucas asked. Caleb lowered his hands. His eyes were red. I should have told you, he said to Nora. Yes. I kept thinking it didn't matter because she never came. It mattered, I know. You let me believe Grandma was the reason Mom stayed away from us? Caleb looked down at the green frosting smeared across his plate. I let Dad's version be easier. Nora waited for him to explain, defend, or ask her to understand. He did none of those things. I'm sorry, he said. She believed him. Believing did not repair anything. It only made repair possible. I can't make you feel better tonight, she said. I know. Ada pushed the cake platter toward him. That is why we have frosting. Marlene laughed through her tears. Denise poured more coffee. No one tried to restore the birthday supper to what it had been before Richard arrived. They let it become this instead, uneven, embarrassed, grieving, and honest enough to stay seated. When the others left, Lucas remained to help close the covered cooking area. Caleb had gone last after splitting wood for the stove, swinging the axe until Nora told him apology had a limit and exhaustion would not turn it into absolution. Lucas stacked plates beside the sink. You okay? He asked. No. Good. Nora looked at him. Your family has a dangerous relationship with that word. She leaned against the counter. Did I do what Dad did? Which part? Decide my version was the only one allowed in the room. Lucas dried a plate slowly. You told him to leave your house after he arrived uninvited and insulted you. That sounds generous when you say it. I'm not generous. You traded roof work for lasagna. Very good lasagna. Nora looked through the window at the porch where Richard had stood. He loved her. Yes. He hurt her. Probably. Both can be true. Lucas set the plate down. That seems to be the expensive part. Nora's laugh came out weak. He stepped closer, then stopped before touching her. What? She asked. I'm paying attention? To what? Whether you want me closer? The question was so simple that she almost complicated it. Nora reached for the front of his shirt and kissed him. It was not dramatic. Lucas's hand settled carefully at her waist, flour still caught in the seam of one finger. The stove clicked as it cooled. Somewhere in the wall, a mouse expressed an opinion. Nora pulled back. You have flour in your hair, Lucas said. You're very bad at this. I was going to say something romantic about the lighting. Vernon installed it. That ruins the moment. Richard did not call the next morning. He did not call when Caleb refused the second loan, or when Caleb sold one of the compact loaders to reduce the first. Richard stopped scheduling him on the larger jobs. Caleb stopped pretending it was temporary. A month after Ruth's birthday, Caleb accepted a project supervisor position with another construction company. The salary was lower than what Richard had paid him during good months and higher than what Richard had paid during bad ones, when company loyalty substituted for a check. Richard called it betrayal. Caleb called Nora from Evelyn's kitchen after the argument. He says I chose you, he said. I didn't offer you a job. He says you turned me against him. Did I? No. Then why are you telling me? Caleb was quiet. I almost believed him. Nora sat on the cabin porch with Evelyn's legal pad on her knee. The time beneath the window had spread farther than Ada claimed was polite. What do you believe now? She asked. That I stayed because it was easier to let him make decisions and resent him afterward. What happens to the house? I keep paying the loan. For how long? Long enough to become deeply familiar with regret. Are you going to sell? Not yet. I moved into Grandma's room. Nora closed her eyes. Caleb heard what she did not say. I packed her things. I didn't throw anything away. It's your house. I know. This time, the words did not sound defensive. He removed Richard's blue tape from the walls and refinished only the damaged floors. The kitchen stayed as Evelyn had left it, except for a new faucet and the missing soup pot. Caleb repaid Nora $38 for the well switch, then $30 for the prepaid phone. She crossed both amounts from the legal pad. The other debts remained unwritten. He came to the cabin twice a month. Sometimes he brought lumber. Sometimes he brought nothing. Once he arrived late and called before Nora could assume he was not coming. He never asked whether she had forgiven him. Richard left one voicemail near the end of winter. Nora listened while unloading carrots behind Ruthie's. I was afraid she would leave, he said. Every time Ruth went to that cabin, she came back less certain about us. I thought if I could keep things steady long enough, she would remember what we had. Maybe I held on too hard. I don't expect you to agree. He did not apologize for disowning Nora. He did not ask to come to the cabin. He had found a sentence that admitted fear without surrendering his belief that fear had justified him. Nora saved the voicemail for 3 days. Then she sent one message. I heard you. I'm not ready. Richard replied, Understood. It was the first boundary he accepted without explaining. The restored freezer arrived in February. Nora paid half from catering work and half from 4 prepaid supper dates. Lucas checked the compressor before she put food inside. If it fails, he said, you're allowed to be upset. Thank you for the permit. You're not allowed to throw chicken at me. That depends on the chicken. The cabin system became less romantic and more dependable. Celia kept reservations at Ruthie's. Cold storage stayed divided, so one failed appliance could not ruin everything. Nora designed menus around ingredients she could use for breakfast service, catering, and supper without disguising the same meal 3 times. Sandra and Kit organized a hospital staff order every month. Warren continued buying extra seats. Nora raised the price once, hated herself for 2 days, and discovered every reservation still filled. She worked 4 dawn shifts at Ruthie's, though Gary retired 3 times and returned after each retirement to explain why everyone was holding a spatula incorrectly. The Saturday table remained twice a month. Moore would have earned more money and turned the thing Nora loved into another room she could not leave. She learned to stop while the table still felt like a table. The roof took most of the spring. Nora bought panels in bundles instead of all at once. Lucas charged labor against his meal account and paid cash whenever he ate at a Saturday supper, so the columns did not become an excuse for either of them. Caleb worked the north side on his days off. Vernon rewired the kitchen circuits after Nora catered his anniversary dinner. Ada supervised from the porch without any recognized qualifications. When the final panel went down, rain came 2 days later. Nora walked through the cabin checking the old leak points. The bedroom ceiling remained dry. No water struck the rooster mug. No tarp sagged overhead. She stood in the yellow kitchen, listening to rain stay outside. Lucas found her there and kissed the top of her head. "Roof works," he said. "Don't sound surprised. I installed part of it. Surprise would be insulting." By April, the porch no longer sagged. The pump ran clear without rattling. Rosemary, mint, and thyme crowded the strip beneath the kitchen window. The floors still sloped enough that a dropped carrot rolled toward the front room, and the bathroom door would not close during humid weather. Nora stopped apologizing for those things. She framed the photograph of Ruth and Evelyn on the porch. Before hanging it, she studied their faces. Evelyn had not left Nora a reward for caregiving. The cabin had cost money, sleep, work, and several layers of skin from Nora's knuckles. It had not made her rich. Some months, it barely helped her break even. But Evelyn had given her the place where Ruth's life began, and where, as an adult, Ruth had kept returning when she needed to hear herself think. Nora hung the photograph in the yellow kitchen, beside the long shelf Caleb made, and beneath Vernon's amber light. The first private supper after the roof was finished was for everyone who had helped keep the cabin standing. Caleb arrived early and split wood without using labor as an apology. Marlene brought another grocery store cake, this time with white frosting, because she claimed green had been emotionally ambitious. Denise carried Evelyn's soup pot from the stove to the table. Celia brought rolls. Gary criticized them while eating 2. Ada stood beneath Ruth's photograph and adjusted it a fraction of an inch. "It was straight," Nora said. "It was nearly straight." Ruth considered straight lines. Vanity. That was because Ruth couldn't measure. Lucas came through the door holding a new pine shelf. "Where do you want this?" he asked. Nora pointed toward the covered cooking area. Above the outside counter, but lower than the window. He held it in place rather than choosing for her. "Here? 2 inches left." "Your other left?" "My only left." Caleb looked up from the wood box. "You want a level?" "No," Nora and Lucas said together. The table had grown by 1 removable leaf Caleb built from the same pine as the shelf. 8 adults fit if they liked one another, and 10 if they were willing to develop the skill. Nora served chicken without mustard and put a dish of it near Ada. The vegetables came from Celia's garden. The biscuits rose properly. The cake remained bad. Rain began after dinner, soft against the new roof. For a moment, Nora stayed near the stove and watched everyone else settle. Caleb and Marlene argued about Ruth's favorite music. Denise corrected Ada's account of Evelyn hiding medication. Gary tried to convince Lucas that gravy could be consumed from a mug if nobody used the word beverage. No one needed Nora to defend her place at the table. Lucas pulled out the chair beside him. Nora sat. Evelyn's soup pot rested near the center, dented by years of use. Ruth and Evelyn laughed from the photograph on the wall. The cabin held heat, conversation, sloping floors, paid bills, unfinished work, and people who had learned how to show up. Nora looked around the yellow kitchen where her mother had first drawn breath, and for the first time in her life, home did not feel like a place she had earned by staying after everyone else left.